All right, everybody. Good evening and welcome to the Concord Public School Committee. I would like to call our meeting to order. And we are actually all present, so we don't have to do a roll call. So we have a pretty quick agenda tonight with really one main topic for discussion and two quick approvals, or two quick votes, I should say. I want to kick off our discussion of the ed plan, just for everybody in the public, for everybody who's newer to the, whoops, sorry. I will entertain, actually, sorry, we have public comment because we're calling to order the Concord Public School Committee. If anyone is in the audience who would like to make public comment, we'll entertain that now. And similarly, if you are on Zoom, if you could use the raise hand feature, we can call on you there as well.
Nobody's on Zoom.
No. All right. So moving forward, I should put the agenda in front of me. We will go into our discussion on the educational plan. So for background for everybody, and I know most of this is probably duplicative, but the building committee is confronted with, as our building committee chair likes to call it, a real bona fide dilemma. We have a project budget and scope that was approved at a January 20th town meeting. And then, we progressed into more detailed architectural documents. The ones that we have right now are at 30%. Is that right? 30% SD or thereabouts. At that milestone, you send these documents off to estimating firms who then sort of give you a sense of what they think the construction budget will, the construction costs will be. So when we got those estimates back, we found that they were about 5 million or so over the budget we had hoped for, expected, and also frankly approved at our town meeting. So we have currently engaged in a process called value engineering, which is essentially the way the building committee looks at reduction in the scope of the project. Some people like to call them cuts, to collapse that $5 million delta and hopefully get us to the original budget. So in all of these iterations, we have a list in front of us that has all these ideas for different ways to reduce the size and scope of this project to meet our budget. And it's really challenging is the long and short. It's just hard. So one of the as the building committee sort of goes through these ideas, we have kind of hit certain roadblocks, and one of the discussion points that has come up time and time again is this educational plan. Now back to the educational plan. This school committee voted on the educational plan in January, I think of 21. I don't remember the exact date. January 26th of 2021. And the educational plan is a document that describes the educational program, what we expect our middle school to look like for our kids, how the teachers are going to deliver it, and how the space becomes a part of that. So like, for example, actually, could you give a good example, like with respect to inclusion? Or
I'm going to talk teams because that's the biggest driver of the building. Our team model is to put 4 teachers of each of the major core content areas: English, math, science, and social studies, proximate to, we do that now, but they're not near each other. Put them proximate to each other with a common team space in the middle so that we can do all sorts of activities together. Kids are in the same place all day, aside from when they go to lunch, gym, some of those common areas, and really build a smaller community, and then have fluid and flexible learning space.
So the educational plan really does in fact relate to the space. And I found that really a sort of fascinating thing. So what we are looking at now, time and time again, as we've gone through this value engineering on the building committee, we are confronted with, oh, well, what about what about if we reduce the scope of X, B, Y, Z? And sometimes it will come up, well, does that adversely affect the educational plan? And are we willing to make cuts that would affect our ability to deliver our ed plan? So right now, the sort of unspoken agreement, if you will, is we're not going to entertain cuts that might affect the ed plan. So, and interestingly, we own that ed plan, right? Like we voted on it. It's our ed plan. So in some ways, my feeling is if we were going to entertain, or if the building committee were going to entertain cuts, they really almost need our permission. Like, oh yeah, we're willing to entertain amending this ed plan so that you can fulfill, you know, your value engineering process. So that I think is what we should discuss tonight. Last night, the chairs of the building committee went to the select board. They had, can Erin share the slides that Dawn and Pat did? I just think this could be helpful. They did sort of like a recap of what we've sort of cut to date in this sort of value engineering process. So I'll go through these really quickly. On May 6th, you'll see in that first slide, the building committee, we removed square footage for a maker space and an alternate PE space. So those were already two cuts that did sort of affect the ed plan, but there was consensus that those two things could be well accommodated in other spaces. So even though we cut them, we were still able to deliver the ed plan and keep that intact. We revised the size of the gym. That was actually an addition. We revised the auditorium size to 420 seats. Also in addition, the background here was there was a lot of community input that led to those decisions. And then we were going to review the building design all in all. So that happened. So on the next slide, you can see where those spaces are. Obviously, this is sort of a kind of representative look at the building, not what the building itself looks like. So you can see in the blue there, that's where we had the alternate gym, alternate PE space removed, the maker space, and then the larger gym and auditorium there in the little brighter orange.
Can I just clarify that the ed plan wasn't calling for the larger gym and auditorium? We were going to be okay enough with a smaller gym and a cafetorium. The community spoke and influenced the committee to increase the size. That hasn't changed.
Yeah. And then you'll see on the next slide our timeline. And these are sort of future dates that are relevant.
No, historic.
Oh,
dates,
sorry,
actually.
Jesus. These are historic.
Last
These are
fall.
last year's dates. So this is sort of a review of where we are. And then moving forward, we are concurrently pursuing our value engineering. And we have also asked the select board to consider a warrant article for a special town meeting that would help us, if needed, to get some extra dollars in the event we are either able to value engineer the entire budget gap or in fact the bids come in higher. And then the final slide is some value management we've already agreed to. And anyone who's watched our meetings can sort of see what those are. These were all items that had pretty broad consensus, I would say. So I think people feel pretty comfortable with taking those.
Yeah, I would just note too that it directly had correlation to the ed plan. We were fine with them, but we did reduce the classroom size. So the square footage is 825 instead of the MSBA recommended 950. And the team commons have come down in size since the original plan, all within what we think is doable.
And then keep saying the final slide, the actual final slide, is just a comparison of other projects out there in comparable phases to us. So you'll see that we're still doing pretty well. We have a lower cost per square foot than a lot of comparable projects out there, which I think to me indicates, that this building is pretty conservative building. And with that recap, is there anything you want to add before?
I mean, the only thing I'd add is the obvious that we're in incredibly extraordinary economic times. That's why we are where we are, not because the scope of the building changed or anything like that. It's simply all the inflation and supply chain issues and unknowns. A lot of the high estimate right now is the unknowns and making sure we have monies to cover those as they might happen.
So I think the question before us is to discuss how we feel about the ed plan and whether we are willing to be a little bit more, whether we're willing to loosen the reins a little bit in the event the building committee could put potential reductions in scope that would affect the ed plan. I think that's really the question we need to answer. The ed plan has come up not only in our middle school building committee, it's come up at both the finance committee and the select board as well. So I think everybody, all of those committees are interested in our perspective on that, so they can even help inform where they land, because the select board is going to be charged with pursuing a town meeting warrant or not, and the finance committee ultimately does make their recommendations about the budget, as if in fact we have to go to town meeting. So I'll turn the floor to you guys for discussion. Court's ready.
I agree. We have a problem in that we have competing needs and we have large town needs looming beyond our school needs. I think it's regrettable that the inflation index that was given to us was so far off. I don't think we were well protected by our professionals, but we have to deal with it. I do take exception to the idea that we should amend the education plan if needed to satisfy the CMS building budget. And I'll tell you why. I personally don't think an ed plan is in fact a budget or a space document. I think it's what you said earlier. It's a program document. And so I think that what we have to focus on is, can we deliver to teachers and students in the facility? The ed plan was delivered about 12 months after the design was started in earnest, because the ed plan was running late because we were running late with it. So we own that. How then did the designers design a building absent an ed plan? They did it using the actual data of teachers and students from our middle school, actual data, real data back at that time, and then moved it up to the 700 number. We have a building that is about 30,000 square feet over what the MSBA would have suggested to us. We wanted MSBA multiple times, so we were prepared to work with that and then do our own Concord ad, were that to be the wishes of the town. So I'm of mind that the education plan is very intact. And I think it's important for the school committee to know that we, as a building committee, have stayed far away from discussing the team commons. The reality right now, as I understand it, is that we are going to have a incoming population that would warrant 7 teams numbers, student numbers, and we're going to build 9 teams. So we have very, very ample opportunity to expand in that ed wing. To avoid a discussion of the quote unquote instructional wing is to put pressure on the building committee and as a consequence, the community, if in fact very little is in play, like the auditorium and the gymnasium, because we don't know how much else is in play. I think Thursday we'll learn more. I think we're going to dig into what we can do on the exterior of the building. How many quote unquote outdoor classrooms do we have? How much theater space do we have outdoors? Does it require the solutions that are being presented to us and so on? So I think there still is room before we consider, we as a building committee, consider gym and auditorium. I hope so.
All right, can we hear from
And
others? We have a lot of
and
time, Court.
finally, as to the numbers you showed up there, I informed you today, I'm still looking as to where those numbers exist in the MSBA site.
They were
So-
sent to you in a link on Saturday.
Yeah,
To the
I
whole middle school
responded to
building
okay.
committee.
Earlier.
Okay, good.
It's in the body of the email.
Because I showed you what popped up for me when I went to.
Now you have the direct
SBA.
links in your email.
Very good. Thank you. That's all I've got. Oh, and finally, VE is normal. I want folks to know that VE is normal on projects. Might even be normal in our own residential work. If we were going to renovate a home, we might be talking value engineering. So I don't think we should be too horrified at the
Oh, gotcha.
prospect that we're doing that.
No, and I think we pointed out there are a lot of VE items that we've taken that had, I think, really broad consensus, which I think, people are willing to be cooperative on this, to meet, to try to meet somewhere in the middle. Anyone else? Cynthia, Carrie, Aisha, Tracy.
I had a question on the teams. So Court, you referenced 7 teams versus 9. What
Just
are
by
the
virtue of population.
coming? So do we have enrollment projections? Are those for 10-year enrollment projections or are those?
Yeah, and I'm not prepared to go through an entire iteration of
Yeah.
the procedures that happen to scrutinize the enrollment work with the NASDAQ projections, look at actual enrollments and plan accordingly. We are at 655 now. I shared that with you last week. That was expected and anticipated and counted on, no question. We purposely are building ourselves that cushion to go as high as 700, knowing that a new school often attracts families. We have a large number of private schools that we share students with. We'd likely keep more of them in-house. And the way we're compensating for that is smaller class size in smaller square footage of classrooms with more teams. So those class sizes are low. So the numbers, if we are open today at 655, the numbers are in the high teens rather than up in the low 20s across the 9 teams. That's intentional so that should we get that 50 some more students, they're going to add to the class size, but not pinch us to the point where we're struggling for another option or another team that we can't accommodate, et cetera. So that's why the classroom square footage is under MSBA, because we built this expecting to be under the number they use for class size to accommodate the enrollment piece.
And how many times have we been rejected by the MSBA?
4.
4.
Yeah.
So realistically, that was never an option. So we have to fund our own building. And I guess, it is a 50-year building. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the housing market's going to do. There could be a correction in the housing market. I mean, prices are really high right now. 5 years from now, they could be really low. Everybody could move to Concord, and I do agree that, when you have a population that goes out to private schools, sometimes the building does weigh into people's minds on that. And I do think that we will have a shift of private school students coming back into the public school, and to underbuild a building and to make it really tight in there. I mean, I'm an educator in my past life, and I feel like smaller class size is what we should be advocating for instead of a larger class size. I would much prefer class sizes in the high teens than in 25. And that has happened in my history as being a parent here. We've had class sizes of 32 at the middle school. We had 70 move-ins one summer, which it can happen. Usually it's 30, but it can happen that we could get an influx of kids. And I just want to be prepared for that. Because we just have no idea what's going to happen.
Carrie.
I just have a question on this. Isn't it standard that when you build a new school or building that you assume for growth? Like I imagine the experts have spoken to this subject, that there is some formula.
Is this in the ed plan? Because I don't think you say focus on, we don't have enrollment in the ed plan, right?
Court brought it up.
So-
I think it's
No, but I
appropriate
just-
to respond to
Okay.
what's at
But
the,
I do think I would like a full, not at this meeting, not maybe at the next meeting, but a full discussion about enrollment. The outlooks, the current enrollment, I think that'd be really, we haven't really talked about it last couple of
Okay.
years,
we
you know,
can-
because I
we
think it'd be
can talk
helpful.
about that. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I'm just
Yeah.
wondering if, there must be some formula that the architects have talked about around how you think about building a building, because
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't want to build it for the community you have now. You'd want to build it for the community you expect to have over the next 50 years, I would imagine.
And
So-
that's the beauty of going on our own.
Yeah.
Because MSBA would dictate, and
Mhm.
they, correct me if it's changed, but in the past, they would build to current population, so you'd be in trouble by the time you open the building.
You still go through the projection process with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah,
They're gonna have their own opinions, which
Yes.
tend to be more conservative. And sometimes like our high school, we're at chock full
Yeah.
because the the younger grades are lower. So we knew we were gonna have to get through this tighter time period. As enrollment declined in the coming years, the high numbers are still at the high school, the lower numbers are making their way up to the middle school.
so
So
then if that's the case, then why would we want to be looking at cutting classrooms? When,
I don't think anybody's discussed that. I don't know why that keeps entering. Nobody's talking about cutting classrooms.
oh, I thought that's what you were implying when you said
Going
I've said over and
17s,
over again,
sorry.
we consider the
going
instruction.
down teams.
The building committee considers so far, correct me if I'm wrong, Alexa. The building committee has considered the instructional wing thus far sacrosanct. Am I
Right,
exaggerating?
and but again, I think as we move along in this process, we need to, I think it would be helpful to the building committee. To know where we stand on this, if we might be a little bit more laissez-faire and say, you know what, hey, we understand you guys are up against a wall and look at these types of things, or if we believe that the building committee should, as you've said just now, look at cuts that don't impact adversarially the ed plan. I think that is what we have to decide collectively today.
And maybe I could say it more clearly this way. I believe that the reason we have a significant budget problem is in no small part because we're hanging on to those 9 teams. And so it leaves us fewer opportunities to look at value engineering elsewhere in light of the fact that we have to look somewhere if indeed we have a budget problem because of inflation.
Cynthia, I feel like you've wanted to say, I feel bad. What would you-
No, I kind of feel like we're all over the place in our conversation, but I don't want to touch the ed plan. But I think there's other things that the building committee could do. I'm not saying specifically that. Honestly, I'm not able to follow it. I'm hoping for a public forum where perhaps that you could maybe after this Thursday meeting, lay things out for the community because it's very difficult to follow exactly what's going on. But I think as far as the ed plan, I don't think we should touch it. We voted
Okay.
unanimously a very short time ago for it, and I think it should stand as the way it is.
All right,
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of thought, an incredible amount of work went into this ed plan. I think that it will serve not just, I think it will serve our kids really well. And I think sounds to me like based on the presentations I've seen from Dr. Hunter and others on the middle school, I've followed as best I can on the building committee. That this is a vision for our community and that the ed plan is part of that vision. It is both a building and an ed plan. And I think it is more than the ed plan is more than just a program. I think it is part of the building and I wouldn't support touching it.
Yeah. All right, so I think maybe if we could entertain a motion about the ed plan so that we can make sure that other committees who intersect with ours know with a vote where we stand. I think that would probably be important. So I can't make a motion. If anyone would put a motion forward, we can move into our action items.
I can try.
Okay.
So I move that the Concord School Committee is it just reaffirm its support for the ed plan as written in January of 2021? And therefore not support amendments to the building that would negatively impact the ed plan, the education plan.
Do we have a second anywhere?
I'll second that.
Discussion by anybody?
I'm gonna have a hard time with it because
Yeah, I do
we're
too.
implying that there's somebody out there that would put the ed plan in jeopardy, and I haven't met that person who wants to put the ed plan in jeopardy, number one. Number two, I don't want to reaffirm this because it implies that somebody thinks there might be something wrong with the ed plan. I don't think anybody says there's anything wrong with the ed
I
plan,
don't-
so
I don't think
I'm
it,
just giving you my opinion,
Sure.
okay? That's all I'm doing, just giving you my opinion.
I would
think
just,
that
yeah,
I think that it
I feel more
it
comfortable with a straight up or down
confuses the
vote.
public, that we have to go back to our own ed plan and say, oh, it's really okay.
Mhm.
And no, we're not gonna hurt the educational delivery of kids. I don't, why is that even in debate? I think it's gonna be misinterpreted.
Mhm.
I don't feel that the ed plan is being challenged. I don't think that our commitment to kids is being challenged with our work on this building. So I think it's I'm sorry, but I think it's a poorly conceived idea. I don't think it's gonna move the building project forward either, frankly.
sure. Well, I'll offer my perspective, which is a little different. The Finance Committee, the Select Board, and our own committee have all discussed different paths forward that in our meetings, in our building committee meetings, it will come up, might this reduction in scope affect the ed plan? Dr. Hunter has weighed in on some of those things. Prince Justin Cameron has weighed in on some of those things. So to suggest that there haven't been opportunities for the building committee to move forward with a path with reductions in scope, from here forward, I think that that has happened. So, and I do think, as it's not just the building committee, the select board and the finance committee need to weigh in on this. So I think they need to understand. It will help them inform even the what their work moving forward. Is there flexibility here? I think that that's a fair question to help everybody. I'm doing this in the spirit of kindness and transparency. We need to help everybody have a clear understanding of what each group is sort of willing to do. So I disagree with Court on that. Anyone else have discussion?
Well, I think if we're reaffirming it and we're making this commitment, what is the harm in voting for it? And we do have a motion on the table. So I'd actually, if there's no more discussion, I'd like to call it to a vote.
Can you reread the motion, please?
Carrie?
Sure. I move that the Concord Public Schools, the Concord Public School Committee, vote to reaffirm its support for the educational program as written on January 26, 2021. And therefore not support any amendments to the building that would adversely affect the implementation of the educational program.
So we don't need to roll call, so we can do all in favor.
Aye.
Aye. I'm going to ask the minutes reflect that I'm voting yes, but reluctantly, because I would have liked to straight up vote. And not
What does
have
that mean, a straight up?
What's
vote?
a-
I would have liked to just to reapprove the educational plan, period.
Oh, got it. All opposed.
No, the reason stated.
So that passes. And then, so our next action item is to vote to approve the CMS handbook. Lori, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, this is very straightforward. There were changes only to dates and names. So we're just bringing this forward for you to formally approve for this school year.
I'll just make a quick statement. I'm fine with voting tonight on the handbook. But I think we might need to scrub it for up-to-date policies because understandably they've come a little,
Yes.
so for next spring. If we could have a.
Yeah,
full
yeah,
link-
yeah. I think there's like an outdated sexual harassment policy, I think in there. We could.
So just maybe.
It's not.
No, not.
Oh, it's
The
not.
reference is
No,
wrong.
no.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
The
Sorry.
MGL reference is not.
No,
okay.
perfect.
no,
So,
no,
yeah,
but there's,
got it.
there's others, but.
Okay, great.
So just if we could have a
We'll
full
scrub
review
it.
of it next spring.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. So all in favor of approving the
I
CMS
don't have a
handbook?
motion yet,
Oh.
sorry.
Oh,
I was just gonna-
Move to accept.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. I don't adjourn this meeting. We're just called to order and we'll convene the region. Sarah and
Sarah,
Sharon
I think
here.
they're here. Doing things a little bit opposite today. We usually start with the reason to get CPS, so it's a learning curve for all of us. Thank you. So I would like to call to order the Concord Carlisle School Committee, and it looks like all. Oh, yes, all members of the school committee are present, and we also have our representatives are present, and Domingos, welcome. It's your
Thanks
first
for
time
having
in
me.
person.
It's great to be here.
And Aisha, we had you in person last time, so good to see you again this year, so. And you have, Domingos, we're gonna get you just a little housekeeping, we're gonna get you your badge, and you have a book in front of you, and for
Thank you,
those of
thank
you
you,
that
thank
weren't at
you.
our last meeting in person, you also have books in front of you.
Appreciate it.
So, all right, so we're gonna start with our CCHS student update, and I think I see, let's see, we've got Harry and Zaria and Felicity. So you're up.
All right, just give me a minute. I think I can screen share, but oh, perfect. There we go.
Perfect.
Okay, so this is our first student update of the year, obviously. The first thing we kind of wanted to touch on were some of the changes we're making for this school year, and a lot of it's internal, but I thought it was just worth highlighting at the meeting. The biggest thing is we've created kind of a group within Student Senate where people can come and talk about their concerns. We had our first meeting on Monday. There's actually a little photo of it down in the corner. And right now it's mostly made up of student senators, but we are going to try and advertise it to the wider community so anyone can feel like they can come and sort of use us as a bridge between like them as students and the administrators. And this is something that we've been talking about for a long time, but our like reach only goes so far with just the three of us. So our hope is that we can kind of get perspectives from more of the student body and then also just hear a lot more about like what's kind of going on at the school.
Yeah, and we also had this idea to kind of create a public forum type thing, where students can talk with the committee or administration, like kind of as, so that the three of us, we can act kind of as a go-between so that more students can get their ideas into like school committee or higher levels. And we think that this is going to be particularly useful for like issues that students have a lot of strong opinions on. So that is something that this advisory group that Harry mentioned will help like facilitate.
For sure, yeah. And then just one more point. One of the things we sort of talked about at our meeting on Monday was involving student voices in more places of the school committee meetings. Last year, I remember we featured trash trucks and also Spectrum Club. And it's something that as representatives, we've just been keeping our eye on. If we think there's any opportunities for students to come and present, we'll certainly bring it up. I think you're on mute.
Sorry. There's now a sense of normalcy and return to like a pre-COVID atmosphere. Some students are like adjusting to the workloads that have like recently gotten bigger and ramped up. And there's been more rules in place regarding being in class and technology usage during class.
For sure, yeah. I think one of the biggest things is kind of making sure that kids are like actually in class. I know last year one of the things we struggled with was people coming late and leaving early and stuff. And it can feel a little bit harsh at first, but I think we'll get used to it over time, particularly with the younger grades who haven't really known too much of a different policy. What else? Oh, do you want to touch on the building access?
Oh, sorry, that was me. Okay, sorry. Yeah, so we have, as you guys may know, probably, we have the fingerprint scanners at CC to kind of enhance security now. Those seem to be working well. There's like slight confusion, and that's mostly in Zaria and my grade, 10th grade, because there was some delay in getting the fingerprint thing set up for our grade, but Mostly for the upperclassmen who are the people who will be using this the most for open campus purposes. It seems to all be going very well. So, and Zaria can touch on like the key fob aspect.
Yeah, I don't think there's been any formal emails about the key fob, but I know that Dr. Hunter is working on that, so I don't think that's going to be too big of a problem.
Yeah. And then travel, this is something we saw on the agenda. I know everyone's really excited about this. It came up at our meeting, and I think everyone's excited to see the return of trips. One of the things, though, kids were a little bit concerned about the cost of trips, and I'm sure there are financial aid policies in place, but normally when the trips come up, people's first thought is that they're excited, and then the second thing they say is that they're a little bit worried about the cost. So I just think it's something that's worth bearing in mind throughout the planning and everything.
The lunches have been approved, and they're like way more, there's a bigger variety of lunches. My friend, in fact, loves the chicken and corn that they serve now. Yeah.
We'll pass that along. They'll be excited to hear
The
that.
daytime
Shout out.
Sandwich is also like a hot one.
Yeah.
It's been a real gift with the
That's it.
COVID restrictions off of the food, so they've got more options. It's been great.
Yeah. And then I think one of the biggest changes we've seen this year is that, Felicity, you can touch on this too, but people don't seem to be as concerned about the new attendance policy.
Yeah. So last year, like when it was first updated, a lot of people were like kind of complaining about it in the beginning, but we think that that was probably mostly because it was such like a big contrast to what like how relaxed things really were during COVID. So now that we've gotten back into like a new school year, and especially with the ninth graders who didn't really have like these really lax restrictions, or they aren't used to, basically the people are getting used to these new attendance policies. And I think everyone is starting to understand that they're really just trying to get everyone to be in class, basically. So yeah, that seems to be going well.
And then within Senate, I don't know, Zari, do you want to talk about the efforts to get someone from Metco?
Yeah, there's been efforts to recruit like a METCO representative for Student Senate. I don't know much about the METCO representative position, but I know that there are at least 3 people signed up for the position and being looked at for the position.
Yeah. And then also we met today, some of the, like, I guess, leadership within Student Senate with the CCHS administration. And I think that was actually really important to kind of get the year started like that. It's helpful for a lot of concerns that wouldn't necessarily be appropriate to bring up here at the school committee meetings, but can probably be dealt with the administration. And I think it just helps with our role as like sort of a bridge between students and the people with the power to actually make decisions. And then this is just kind of for fun, but some of the events coming up over the next couple of weeks. We have the poet Richard Blanco's presentation on the 15th, and I know we're going to be talking about that in advisory too, which is really exciting. And then on the 17th, we have a training from the Massachusetts Association of School Committees for student reps. I went to one last year. This one is on Zoom, but I think it'll still be valuable, especially since Zaria, you and Felicity didn't get to attend last year.
On September 23rd, we have the activities fair, which is kind of like for, I think, the clubs during the lunch blocks, and everybody gets to like, go see all the clubs and activities we have to offer. And the pink dance is something I'm new to this year. It's a dance where is after, I believe, a football game. And it's held at 7:30, and the $10 ticket. Seems really fun. You wear pink.
Yeah, and the day after that is Cchs for Cancer, which I'm sure everyone has heard about, or if not, then you've probably seen the lawn signs all over Concord. So yeah, that's just like a really great activity. There's always like a lot of people who show up, and it's a really great community event as well.
Yeah, and then just 2 last things to touch on. We also have the Mighty Moose 5K, all part of the Cchs for Cancer weekend, kind of the graphics off to the side. And then also rehearsals have started for CC Theater's fall play. I believe the performances are later in October, but definitely something exciting coming up. So yeah, sorry, I know it was a bit long-winded tonight, but we definitely had some things we wanted to be be sure to touch on.
It was definitely not long-winded. I love your presentation format. I mean, you guys just keep getting better and better. So really great job. I could take some notes on that. And I think that maybe, you know, if I have updates like that, I should present slides so the public can see my updates. So thank you for that. I just have one question and then I'll open it up to the rest of the committee if anybody has a comment or question or anything like that. How do you guys feel about the cell phone pockets at the high school? Do you think that feels new this year? And for members of the committee who maybe don't have someone at the high school, a lot of teachers are using pockets where students check their phone in at class. Have you heard any feedback on that?
I mean, I could start and then you guys can jump in. I think it kind of depends on the way individual teachers are implementing it. Like in a lot of my classes, the teacher will kind of say either just have it away in your bag, or if you don't think that you can be trusted to not be on your phone, or it's kind of like a willpower thing for you, then you should probably put it up in the little holder. But I honestly don't think it's too much of a change. I mean, the policy has always been in my time at the high school, just don't be on your phone during class. Like, don't be on your computer during class when you're not using it for something that's like kind of relevant. I don't think it's been too big of a deal.
Good, good. Anyone else have questions? Oh, yeah, go ahead, Felicity. Go
Sorry,
ahead.
I was just gonna say, I don't have much to add, but I know, because I don't actually have a phone, so like it's not so applicable to me, but I do know that some of my teachers are using that for attendance, which is like, I guess it could be both good and bad, because if your phone is in the caddy, I guess, like even if you go to the bathroom, your teacher probably knows that you're not just going to be like walking around the hallways with your phone. But yeah, for people like me, hopefully I won't just get marked absent someday because
So noted. Somehow I got that.
I'll pass that along.
Me personally, I have difficulty using the caddy only because I forget things really easily. So I'll put my phone in the caddy and then leave for my next class and not remember at all to bring my phone with me. And I'll like remember like right before school ends. Like I almost left school without it one time. It was not really fun, but you know.
Thank you. And does
guys.
anyone else have any questions or comments? We're good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you.
Really great update. Okay. At this point, we're at the public comment section of our meeting, and we, just as a reminder, this is a meeting in the public, but not with the public. If you'd like to make a public comment, we're going to start in the room first, and you'll have 3 minutes to state your name and address. And then if you are online, you can use the raise hand feature, and then you will be addressed.
Hi, I'm Kristen Haggerty, 95 Revolutionary Road. Welcome to Minneapolis.
Thank you.
I have comments on 2 different things. One is about the strategic planning process that you guys are going to discuss this evening. I'd like to know when the results from the analysis will be shared publicly, or if they have already. I didn't see them. I believe that's at August in your plan. I'd like to know who will be or was invited to join the inclusive planning team. And I'd like to know what's being done to seek and include more diverse voices in the strategic planning process, especially those who have not been included in the past. And I'd like to see metrics that represent the concerns of students and parents, especially Metco families and other families of color. I think that was probably missing largely in the last strategic plan, and we have an opportunity to capture that better. You know, by comparison, or the reason I'm asking these things is when I did look at the education plan, which I know was written and updated, you know, before now, there were listed about 17 contributors to the plan, and I would be curious to know how diverse that representation was that went into the development of the educational plan that you just discussed. My second point is about the discussion that was had about the CMS building and your concern. What I heard was somewhat a concern about enrollment. Maybe I boiled it down, and I want to encourage the committee to understand and appreciate fact-based decisions based on historical data, which you have, as well as reasonable projections, which also exist, like the housing production plan, which includes a projection for Concord that says the population is aging, And certainly based on zoning, we are not having families move in with any significant increases to enrollment. So there are some data points that we have that I think would be useful. And I want to make sure that we're not making decisions, or I'm not making any decisions, that you're not making decisions based on assumptions for worst case scenarios, because the other data point we have is new buildings were constructed at the elementary school, each one right over the years. And I think you can look at enrollment data to see if a new building attracted a largely significant population change. So you have a lot of data points that you can look at without having to say, well, we think that a new fabulous building is all of a sudden going to change enrollment in a way that's going to degrade student education, because I do not believe that it will. So thank you.
Thank you. Right, anyone else in the room? Having seen no one. If you are on Zoom and you would like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand feature. And it looks like we have no one. All right, so thank you. Moving on to the reading of the minutes. So you should have received the minutes from our last session, which included the workshop and the school committee evaluation and the goal setting. And I had a couple members reach out to me with comments. So if we can just have a discussion before we vote, if you have any additions or discussions on the minutes.
So I have not finished compiling those. I did have a chance to watch most of the workshop. So I'd like to put a hold on them, because I don't think it's, I can't in lifetime give you all my changes.
But so I sent them out last week, and I think I sent you the recording.
I've
So
been
you're
busy.
not prepared to vote on them tonight.
I just ask for a hold, if you don't mind, till the next meeting.
Okay, and any other comments?
I mean, if everybody else is ready to vote, then I'll abstain, I guess.
Okay, so I would, Yep. Yep.
I want to make sure that everything's captured in these. I think it was a really good meeting, and I think there were some good takeaways that I don't think were fully captured, but
okay.
so.
So maybe if we can hear from other members to see if you're prepared to vote on these minutes tonight.
I don't know the nature of the scrutiny that Cynthia and Sarah are giving this, but I trust that if they think it's worth a hold, and if the chairs don't think that these have to be on the street as formally approved immediately, I think we should honor the concerns of members around this table.
Okay, and I'd ask the other members, are you prepared to vote on the minutes tonight or not?
I'm happy to hold. I'm happy to vote.
Okay.
Either way.
Same. Okay, so let's put it on hold and we'll put it on our meeting for the 27th. And if you have any additions, if you could please send them to me, and then we'll get them to Erin and
It's just the
committees will
workshop.
see them. It's just the workshop.
Yeah. I'm prepared to vote in the other minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for both, it's just the workshop.
Just the workshop. I mean, it was like, we all put so much effort into that self-evaluation. I just want to make sure.
And just to be clear, and I think, and I'll just publicly say to everyone too, with the minutes, I'm also prepared to put in the document from Glenn and Dorothy that captures in written what the written form, what their recommendations are, so we can add those into the minutes. And that might, that might capture better exactly what the recommendations were, because it was really more recommendations from them than a discussion from us about it, but I'm happy to attach that also, and I'll get those with Erin.
That'd be great.
I just think that, future committees, it was a lot of good information that's good to remind that we don't need to future committees don't need to recreate that whole,
Okay.
you want it as a baseline to move
Yep.
forward.
Yeah, so that's what I'll be proposing, is to add those into the
Perfect.
minutes. So that'll be the first edition, and then I'll resend them out.
Great.
And if you have any other comments, then you can send them my way.
Is it worth voting on the
Yes.
other one today and just hold on the workshop?
Is it just a hold on the workshop?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's vote on the 8:22 minutes. So I'd entertain a motion to approve the 8:23 minutes, which was the meeting that was not the workshop meeting.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Any more discussion on that?
Thank you, Erin.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Correspondence. I did not, I will say as of noon today, I did not have any regional school committee correspondence.
And We at CPS had 22, I believe, emails that were all singularly focused in nature, which was support of keeping the scope of the CMS building intact and requesting to let voters decide about amendments to the budget in town meeting. We did get one, I think, regional email. I thought it was regional this afternoon.
Not as of noon. I kind
Yep,
of stopped
okay.
at noon.
Oh, yep, sorry, great. Sorry.
I had to make a cutoff point at a certain time in my preparation. Sorry.
Okay, so then that was it. That's all we got.
Okay. Chairs and liaisons reports. All right, I think we have a few people that want to make reports. Cynthia, you had something?
So I have the PEG Access Committee. I'm actually just not a liaison, but a member. We're in the process of doing a review of the franchise agreement, which is a pretty big deal. We, at the recommendation of John Harris, because it was over 10,000, sent out an RFP to 12 firms, I think, 10 to 12. 2 met the criteria, and we awarded to Busky Associates at the tune of around $38K. So it's a fairly elaborate contract with a lot of services from the firm over the next year or so. So stay tuned. We're going to have community forums and focus groups and surveys and all kinds of things to educate the community of and this importance. And as I'm a member, an issue that came up is the ongoing desire to upgrade the equipment in this room, and what we're trying to get the equipment ordered, and we hope that that can happen soon. So Mark doesn't need to set this up in such an elaborate way every meeting. So I'm going to put in my 2 cents to get that done.
That is underway, so I don't have the exact
Hey,
status,
Cynthia.
but it's in process.
When we like assign chairs, liaisons, and members, Domingos and Aisha weren't with us. Do you mind giving a quick overview of what the PEG Access Board is?
So almost every community that has a community television, it's public education and government. Is that right? Did I get the PEG acronym correct? And we basically oversee the operations. Is that kind of correct? Or not the operations, but the court's more senior expert on this. I'm going to sort of defer so I don't make a big
Very
mistake.
quickly, cities and towns give right of way to companies to bring in telecommunication services. And in return for allowing them to travel on our information highways around town, we can extract money from them in the form of negotiating a contract. And then typically that money is used for local public access television. So that's the essence of it all.
And our one company is Comcast. You know, some communities have multiple companies, and we just have one. And we're a little bit different because we have our own light plant that provides broadband. So the Comcast has some significant competition.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting dynamic here in Concord. Carlisle has a different situation than we do.
Question, if I
got
might, through
nothing.
the chairs.
Sure.
Just, is this vendor, this consulting firm,
Busky Group, yep,
Buschke Group, who did the Carlisle work
correct.
a year or 2 years ago, and I think credibly,
Mhm.
am I accurate in saying they now are working for the town of Concord to A, inform the contract renewal process, and then B, help the town manage it?
Absolutely,
But the town
Yes.
actually manages it,
yes,
and this consulting firm kind of holds our hand.
right, because it's a
Advisors, okay.
complicated process.
Okay.
And it has, I think there's significant changes in 19 or something or other, 2019, to some of the laws around the franchise agreements. And this is a California firm, which is interesting. So she is, national, but she's just had experience in Carlisle, which I think made us feel like she knew basically the community.
And this will be a 10-year contract.
Yes, is it 10 or 12? I know,
It's
just
10.
I was just 10. Okay.
Great. Okay. And I don't think does anyone else have an update for tonight? Court.
We can
Yep.
be, I think, quick on this one. This is last night's select board. Dr. Hunter was there, our chairs were there. We have Peggy Briggs and Matt Johnson here with us tonight, both there last night. Just a couple of high points. The building committee chairs reported on value engineering to date. Made the point that we continue on with our work this Thursday. And Chair Nelson was quite explicit that it's being designed to an ed plan, quote unquote. So I think the chairs are comfortable that we're on that ed plan. When we look at the current town approved budget of 103.7 million with a 2.5% contingency, we know that didn't work out as well as we had hoped. We're 5.3 higher. There was some discussion about the idea that maybe, nobody knows, but maybe the building committee would bring not one, but more than one path forward to the citizens, one being minimal value engineering, hence a higher cost, or two, a back to budget, which would be significant in its implications, or three, a building committee quote unquote recommendation with the assumption that might land somewhere in the middle. I think that's what I was picking up. But again, that was speculation with discussion still underway as to whether there might be a special town meeting in December reflecting, help me out here, the 60% estimates, or in January reflecting even better 90% estimates. Others can help me out.
So next Monday on the 19th will be when the select board decides if we're going to have a special town meeting. Is that the crux of it?
I don't think Mr. Johnson can speak for the
Can't
select
speak for the
board
select board. The
necessarily,
discussion
if they haven't
will
decided.
take place
Yes.
about a special town meeting.
Yes, that is going to be an agenda topic.
Great,
So
thank you. Okay. And no other committees, I don't think. Yep.
Just,
Sarah?
I didn't email this, but I thought it was worth just noting that the Carlisle Castle playground started
Mhm.
getting built this weekend. All 5 Carlisle School Committee members attended at some points over the weekend to help out. But more remarkably, there were a bunch of CCHS kids there. There was the cheerleading team. There were, ad hoc groups of kids. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to all the Concord Carlisle kids who came to help move rocks and dirt and did assemble and everything. It was just a fantastic, and there'll be another building weekend towards the end of the month, I think from about the 20th to the 25th. And hopefully the grand finale will be the reveal on the 25th.
And the good news is it's no skills required. So actually Sharon and I had a little discussion about this. If we would like to go as a committee and go help with the build, we certainly could do that. There's a sign up genius.
Yeah.
So I'll send out the sign up genius if anybody wants to help build a playground. 2 of my kids were actually there, and the cheerleaders thought that they were babysitting and they ended up building. It was a bit of a surprise. And but they gladly built a playground, and and it was great because it was really into volunteer, and I saw it in Lori's tweets this weekend.
Your pictures are
So
great.
it was really, it's really a great community event between both towns. So if anybody wants that, I'm going to send the email out with the sign up genius link. And there is babysitting there too, for people that have younger kids. You can drop your kids off and you can do the work and they'll get babysat. And there's even food.
And their meals, yeah.
Their meals.
Yeah, we've had
Their
amazing
meals. It's really-
sandwiches, pizzas, all sorts of stuff donated. So-
Great. I think in terms of, we're going to hear next week about the DEI update. Next meeting, on September 27th. And I think no one else sent me anything. So I think we're good.
We've
Okay, and
just
then we're
tucked
Lori.
me on
Yeah,
there, just so I could
'Cause
talk
we're
on
at the
security
superintendent's
briefly,
update. Yep.
rather than give me a whole agenda item. I just wanted to name our reinvigorated efforts towards security, which COVID had essentially stalled or undone. In some places, it was just contradictory to do some of the security measures against lockdown versus some of the distancing and other things. So we've been really on a mission to prioritize that as we rolled school back. So all of the teachers across all of the schools have had Alice training. The SROs went building to building over the course of 2 days. They did the presentation 8 times, but it was really important. They did it in a smaller setting where teachers could interact with them. So the teachers have all been trained. We're going to be following up now with some visits to classrooms by the SROs, making our way to training of the kids at the middle and high school. We're still talking about the developmentally appropriate way at the elementary schools, so more to come on that. with the goal of drills and practicing by the end of the month or early October. We've put badges back in place. All the staff's been asked to find their badge, wear it all the time, really visually set a tone of security. Kristen's office took the emergency response plan that we updated in the fall of 19 and January of 2020. And finally got it off our desks and sent out for binding and production that will be hard copy in classrooms and posted very visibly. And we're looking at an app called Crisis Go that we've sort of had on the back burner for the last few years, and just really sending messages of our schools are locked. That's why the kids are talking about fingerprints and fobs. We are working on the fobs. Since open campus is a challenge. So we're pleased. The response has been really positive by staff. Families were noticed, as you saw in my letter on Friday, and we're going to continue to communicate with them, but it feels like we're getting our plans back in place, and we're just feeling good about that. So I just wanted to offer that
Yeah,
up.
no, absolutely. And we are going to be putting, superintendent's reports for things like this right into our agendas. We're chairs, liaison, superintendent's report. Some is it might be the assistant superintendent of finance. We might put in a little report in there if there's not an actual vote, just to kind of be a placeholder where to put that. Yes.
Dr. Hunter, we have been talking about Crisis Go or the equivalent for a while. And as I recall, we've got some schools that are in particular need because cell service is very poor. So are you also prioritizing who might get attention first? Is that
We
part
certainly
of the
will. So
equation?
it's going to be a voluntary rollout. We can't mandate it because teachers will need to use their cell phones. So as we talk about the kids, it will work on their laptops, but it will be voluntary. We're going to prioritize the high school in Alcott because the cell service is worse there than other places, although I'm hearing the town's working on that with an attempt at a plan. But until then, we want to be sure we have all the options that we can. The SROs, just in terms of how things have evolved, just telling teachers that even if you don't have self-service, if you hit 911 on your cell phone, someone's going to get it. And not to let that limit you because you feel like you don't have service. 911 will bypass the fact that there's really no towers around and get to the station. So that was informative in and of itself. We want to have as many tools as possible because we're just being as prepared as we can to give teachers options, not ever knowing what the situation will be. So that's going to be the rollout. And yes, that is meant to be another option because what the Crisis Go app will allow is a red button. It's literally red. Hit the button and you can notify people you need help and it will know where you are. So without any texting or any other signals of any kind. Yeah.
Right.
More to come.
All right. Moving on to discussion. We are very excited tonight to have some of our CCHS teachers here to talk to us about travel. And I know if Dr. Hunter, if you want to start and then
I'd love to
go to them.
So we are excited. This has been many years since we've had this discussion and even more since we traveled because we had a lot of discussion in 2019, 2020, and then no one went anywhere despite all that discussion. So we are glad to be bringing this back. I've been working directly with the high school teachers that have been interested in putting together and organizing international travel. So you've got the list from them and the ones that are able to attend tonight are here to just answer questions for reference. As you can see, we have 4 trips that are proposed for this school year between February and June. A French exchange in February, a trip to Italy in April, both corresponding with the vacations, and then 2 trips once school's out, a earth science trip to Iceland and a London trip right after the close of school as well. 2 trips are on here for consideration. Those aren't quite as timely because you'll have more time. They do need some indications shortly, so they'll be able to work on the planning pieces because those need front end time. There's a proposed New Zealand trip in February of 2024. And then the Denmark exchange, probably the timeliness there is not that our kids go to Denmark in 22, 23, but the Denmark kids would come to us. So we would need some sense that you're supportive of sending our kids to Denmark in April so that we can do the host part this coming school year. So I think the documents, the intent here was that they're pretty thoroughly thought through. Back in June, I had brought to you things that we knew we needed to talk about, and we've been working through those accordingly. One is the COVID piece, and I'll just name, there's no perfect answer to the COVID piece in travel. We've done the work on cancellation policies, and having lived some really difficult experiences when the trips were canceled very suddenly 2 years ago, we know what didn't work. There is inherently, we haven't found 100% refund policy all the way up till the trip happens. So there's going to have to be some stated risk here. I wish it were different. It just isn't. So we're going to be very clear that kids and parents understand what if there's any, what the financial risk might be. Some of them have really strong policies that get you very close to full refunds, just a $100 deposit. Others less so. Some of the exchange trips tend to work directly with the airlines because there's no big tour group going along with it. We're working just on airline piece. So each of the leaders is getting very versed in what they're proposing. We'll be sure we're communicating that very, very thoroughly. The money part, let's just name that. We all have named and know that that's a challenge. These are expensive trips. So what we're working through on the Sharon Young Scholarship Fund is healthy right now at $25,000-ish that hasn't been used to this point. Every trip will go out saying that there's an opportunity for subsidy. I'm going to pull together the Sharon Young committee, but whatever we called it. Madeline's already volunteered to be part. I think one of you should participate, and we'll put together the package of how to ask for the subsidy and the formula we're going to use. I've done some research. We've done this years ago. I did more recently. There's a huge range of what other districts do. Newton's pretty generous and does annual huge fundraising for this purpose. LS has a pretty tight policy. It's a limited scope of support, pretty well based on the free and reduced lunch criteria. So it's a much more narrow approach. I feel like we're going to be somewhere in the middle because these are expensive trips. So even families of pretty average kind might be hoping for a little bit of relief. So that we are going to pull together, and all families will know. I think what our goal tonight is, if you'll consider approval, and I know we normally do first reading and second timing with, trying to pull this together. We brought it to you in June, hoping that was the intent of a first reading without all the details, getting it to you now. Worst case, if you waited 2 weeks, I think it does slow down enrollments and it does have impact on enrollments and planning of the trip as we try to get word out to the kids. We're going to consolidate it all into a very effective webpage so the kids can all see all of the trips at once. We want to be sure that the scope of opportunities is very clear, both this year and next year. People are going to want to plan. We expect some pent up hope for this based on a few years of not traveling. So we've even talked about waiting lists and how to manage those, because we expect that might be the case this year. Other things we're going to talk about is just making sure we can meet the needs of all kids as they travel. Kids are very complex in certain situations, especially to be internationally around the world. And we want to just be as thoroughly prepared as possible. So that's work that we'll be doing in-house at the high school, leadership and service teams and administration. And I think we're feeling pretty comfortable. This is a nice, I thought we might be bringing you a list of like 10 trips, and I was going to be overwhelmed with that. It's a nice balanced approach, I think, to getting started again with very veteran trip leaders, which is why I'm excited some of them could be here tonight. So that's where we are. We're here happy to answer questions and talk through anything you need more information on. Could they introduce themselves so you'll know who's here? Thank you, Chris.
Hi.
Madeline, you might, oh, good. Go ahead, Ren.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Pinot. I'm actually retired last year, but I came back a couple of times and coming back to do the exchange, which is one of my favorite things about my job. So.
Hi, I'm Florence Russell-Arental, and I'm doing the French exchange along with Rhonda Pinot, and Nuna Pinto is a new French teacher.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Smith. Sorry, my image is not up, but I'm department chair at the Concord Carlisle High School World Language Department, and I'm supporting the French and Latin teachers in these two travel opportunities.
Teresa, do you want to go next?
Sure. I'm Teresa Ruggiero, and I'm here representing the other Earth Science teachers and our trip to Iceland.
Thank you. Melissa?
Hi, I'm Melissa Carr, and I'm excited about this New Zealand the trip to New Zealand and the associated Leadership Academy. And the trip would be next year, and the academy would be begin at the beginning of the school year next year, and hopefully we would finalize the participants this year. So that's part of why I'm bringing it to you now, and I'm super excited about it.
Great. Madeline?
Hi, I'm Madeline Pooler. I'm one of the Latin teachers, and I'm excited to hopefully return to Italy with my Latin students.
And Greg, you're the last one.
My name is Greg Cohen. I'm one of the art faculty at Cchs, and I've been running the Denmark exchange program for a number of years. And we're excited to rekindle our relationship with our sister school, who, you know, they've been as locked down as us. So really looking forward to seeing them and having their students visit.
Great. So Tracy, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, so I guess I'll just start out. I just have one more piece of information to add, because I was part of, and I disclosed this at the spring a few years ago. I was part of that Sharon Young Scholarship Committee, and the intention was always to raise more money, but it was the last meeting of that
This meeting just
scholarship available for kids. So that was just my own comment to add. So I would turn it over to our committee to see if we have any questions. Your packets were very thorough, so we appreciate the packets. And I'm just going to open it up for questions first, and then that might lead to more discussion. Court?
In June, we looked at football, soccer, and cross-country trips, if I'm correct. And so I'd hope the school committee is quite clear on which trips we are tonight being asked to provide initial approval for, which really is the norm. We're telling teachers, yes, we like it. Start your fine tuning, and which trips the administration is seeking final approval for, and on any final approvals. Is there anything more we're going to learn, or is the detail such that there is no more planning to be done? I'd be curious on some clarity there. And then as to the Sharon Young, separate question, Sharon Young Fund, is that a separate account within student activities? Is it one of the many sub-accounts that lives over there?
It's a donation. It's not a student activity fund. Donation fund. Its own discrete balance.
And managed out of your office.
Correct.
Very good. Thank you.
So we did vote the travel for the athletic trips. So those are off of your need for tonight. It's the 6 that are listed in the agenda. France, Italy, Iceland, London, England, New Zealand, and Denmark. Those are the ones that
we've
asked
removed
for
the
kids.
Ecuador.
No, I understand that, but what I was seeking was
Final.
which ones are initial for purposes of more planning, which ones are final because we don't have time for more planning.
I mean, I think that we've had the information about the trips. It would be my opinion that we should go for final approval on French, Italy, Earth Science, London. And as I heard from Dr. Hunter, the Denmark exchange, we would need to know that right now to accept kids here. Because I think for parents to get the information in a timely manner, they need it as quickly as possible. And if we wait to the later meeting in the month, I think we're just delaying it a little bit more. That's like a whole nother month, and then they can get the information out where, now we can get the website up and running and it can really be accessible to parents. So that would be how I see that. New Zealand's a little bit further away, but it also requires a lot more planning. So I think we could definitely go for initial approval there and then, see if there's any additional information we're seeking.
I trust Dr. Hunter's in accord.
Yes, thank you.
Unless you think differently. So
No, I think that's
it. Sorry.
I think that's accurate. That would mean, Melissa, you'd have a couple more weeks. We might have more questions. We haven't really shared the full leadership plan idea of yours as thoroughly as we probably could. So, but
yeah.
And then I think teachers, do you have more planning to do, or you feel like you're ready to roll this out? I know you've been working really hard we met right as school opened 2 weeks ago, and they've been working all summer. So I think they're pretty well vetted because of what you did in June to kind of give them that initial, maybe not first approval, but enough consensus to do the work over the summer.
Well, we're in the process of making all the arrangements, and we have already set up a schedule for the students to come to be interviewed as of next week. And we're in touch with the French school in Versailles.
Okay. Any other questions for our teachers while they're with us on their trips? And just for the committee, I had asked a question about to Dr. Hunter that she then passed through Ms. Carr. So thank you so much on the Leadership Academy. Maybe you can just talk about, Melissa, could you just talk about what the Leadership Academy is?
Sure. The idea here is the Leadership Academy would begin in September, and so September of next year, September of 2023, and it would be monthly meetings leading up to the trip, and then the trip would happen, and then there would be a few monthly meetings after. And the idea really is to introduce the people to one another, the people who will be traveling to one another, as well as to introduce the students and teachers who are traveling to the Maori culture and New Zealand history, and some of and do some team building activities before we travel internationally together, and also to do to begin some exercises in leadership. So it's not, to be clear, that we're calling it the New Zealand Leadership Academy. It's not enrolling in a separate institution. It's run by us. So I don't know if that helps.
That answers it. And at first I was thinking, I just heard New Zealand Leadership Academy. I'm like, is there a class associated with it? But no, it's really like just a trip bonding. And you have done this before with Earth Science. When you did the Iceland trip, you've got those kids together for a period of time before those trips. So it's the same model that you've used before.
It's a similar model. It's a longer timeline, but it's a similar goal and similar model, but it's a longer timeline and has some reading involved, and so a little bit of an academic component, but it's not a formal class.
Okay.
I got a couple of questions, just some clarification questions. How do you guys go about picking the students? Is it, offered to, freshmen all the way up to seniors? And how many students are you guys planning to take on the trip?
Would one of you like to volunteer to start that? Great question.
Go ahead, Madeline.
So am I up, Rhonda? So it depends. Normally for Italy, we've done 25, anywhere from 25 to 28. And we've just prioritized by grade, seniors, juniors, sophomores. So we sometimes take ninth graders. Usually we don't, mostly because they get a lot more out of the program if they're further along in their Latin studies. So, but it just depends a little bit on, sometimes there's, just particular circumstances. Over the years, I have taken students from all 4 grades. Usually with Latin, we are able to take almost everyone who wants to go. We don't have, if I ask kids to submit an application just purely to ensure that we're all on the same page, because you have to really love Latin and want to be walking 10 miles a day, because we walk a ton. They call it the Cooler Death March on the last trip. And because that's the way you see Rome. So I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page on sort of, is this trip right for you? That's really sort of the purpose of the application process, but that's always, I've never not taken anyone who's wanted to go. So, and the financial piece, I know you've addressed that, but that is something that every year, every time I've done it, and I've done at least 6 trips, we've always been able to provide financial aid. We've sometimes had to get creative at the last minute, but we've always been able to do that. And that's something that we all, I know, take very seriously and want to be able to provide the opportunities for everybody.
Okay, it's quite similar for the French exchange, although it's not a trip, it's an exchange. So actually, typically we have a smaller group. In the past, it's been 16, but the last time we had 18, because actually 18 people applied and we wanted to take everybody. So We made it 18, so we decided to keep it at 18 at this time. Similar to the Italy trip, we have the upperclassmen that have priority and students that have never, ever been to France. So maybe if somebody has possibly had, is half French and has spent all their summers in France, we might say, well, maybe we could let somebody else go who's never been to Europe, something like that. But we have interviews, like I said, next week. And we'll see how many people we have, and we try and take it, of course, as many as up to 18 as we can. So so far it's worked out really, really well in the past, and it's been a huge success. So I'm happy to do it again. Excited about it.
Okay.
Did that answer the
one more.
questions?
Go ahead.
I'm new to the table, so I'm just trying to figure it out. What's the cost? What's the average cost per trip or per pupil?
Yeah, this year, Florence, it's 1,900. Is that correct? About?
Yeah, so this year it's we are targeting the budget of 1,900, knowing that 3 years ago the budget was we asked for 1,700, but we try to, so we don't spend everything, we spend what we have to spend, and we gave back almost 500 back to the families. So because the 1,900, the cost includes, so of course the ticket, and then the French students who are coming to Concord, Carlisle to visit the families, we pay for all their field trips. And in exchange, all the American students going to Paris, the field trips are paid by the French school. So it's a nice agreement. And so it's 1,900 will cover more than anything, and whatever is left will be divided by the families.
Yeah, and I speak for the Denmark Exchange is a similar cost structure, I think, and we've also been able to do refunds. And I think that's the cost breakdown. So having chaperoned on a trip that's more like a tour, that the exchanges in general tend to be a little cheaper than the trips, because we don't have to pay for hotels and that sort of thing. So because we're housing students when they visit here, and they're housing us when we are there. So that significantly reduces. And as stated, the cost. So in Denmark, if you're a school group, you get free access to most of the places that we go. So that really helps too. So it's sort of two different things. Maybe Melissa Carr, who's been on trips, could speak more to the cost of the more tour guide trips in general. I don't want to make up an amount that I don't remember correctly.
Yes, the other trips, I think the earth science trips in the past have been, it is a very different cost structure, as Greg has pointed out, because of the hotels and costs of doing the activities when we're doing it as a tour group, as opposed to when we're being hosted in people's homes. And so it's a very different cost structure. And if I'm remembering correctly, some of the earth science trips have been around, I don't know, Teresa, what is this year's? I don't want to misspeak for what this year's is.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, Ray Pavlik is the one who has these numbers, and he's at a soccer game, coaching a soccer game right now. So I'm a stand-in here, so I don't have that number, but
it is in our packet. I'll find it.
Yeah, we have the number in our packet, and I think it's,
3,000 or so.
yeah. And I think they can range anywhere from the exchanges, like say like 1,800 all the way up to closer to like 5,000 and up. So there's definitely a difference. And again, the exchanges, they're staying at, families' houses, which definitely is different. And I guess, I think what I would say to the committee, if we don't have any questions, I'm changing my mind, Chair. I actually think we should put them all on final approval, because to give these trips to parents as a menu, because parents have to make decisions and kids have to make decisions. And if they have some, but not all, that might change things. Because, I know that families, like, they might say, my child has to pay for it, or it's one trip in your 4 years of CCHS, or it's no trip. So I think to be fair to the students and the families, maybe to offer all of them as a menu. So I would just ask our committee to consider all of them as a final approval. And that was just as I'm thinking and listening, I'm like, okay, wait a minute, how are you going to decide if you're a student or a family, what the decision is? And I think you need everything in front of you first. So, but if someone has questions on a particular trip, we can push that final approval, but we do have a very thorough packet from our teachers, so.
I'm,
I have one question.
Yep,
that
Sarah.
that-
Yep.
I mean, and there was, I mean, these trips are very well thought out.
Yeah.
There's great information. One thing I just had a question now about the exchanges. Is it required, like, if you participate in the exchange, you then have to host somebody, or it's an option to host somebody?
Can ask them.
The Denmark exchange has been a requirement of participating in the exchanges is because the Danish students come first, that yes, you're expected to host and go on the trip. Now, we've had extra Danish students come, and I've actually had to reach out to the community for extra housing at times, but we've never had the opposite. We've never had a student not host.
It's the same thing for the French exchange. If you participate, then you have to host a French student. And same as for the Denmark, we may have more French students than American students, and one family may have to host 2 French students, or we may offer a French student to a family who doesn't want their child to travel this year. Or they can make separate arrangement and say, my child can't travel during the vacation, but he'll travel in the summer, and then it's a separate arrangement.
Can I jump in also? Now, let's say if a Boston family wanted to take advantage of the program and their children applied and they were accepted, how would that work out for the Boston families? Is that something you guys thought out?
The Denmark exchange has had Boston host families, and the Danish student lived with them in Boston and rode the bus in every morning and took the late bus back to Boston after they. So the idea of the exchange part of it is to experience the school life of the host, the same way as our students experience what school life is like in Denmark. So yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Thank you.
It's the same thing for the French exchange, and as a child, I participating in exchanges, and it's basically a family has one more child for 2 weeks, so you have to agree to it. One more child.
What's one more?
But you lose a child for 2 weeks.
The community who can't go at this point for whatever reason, but they could receive a student and enjoy part of the exchange, participate and learn the language and culture through hosting. And that can also add to the cost as an exchange participant. It may be priced lower than the group trips, but it does include the cost of, the meals that you provide for the student while they're with you. And then the families, of course, will provide meals on the other side. So that is more of the cost that's not shown in the price.
Aspects of our trips over the years have been challenging for this school committee. It seems like a lot has been worked out. In skipping the 2-step approval, I'd be doing so on the premise that we have experienced teachers who have done this before, and we don't want to put that 2-step process in place, because in this case we don't need to. But I don't think we're setting a precedent to say that 2-step isn't the way forward often. And for newer members, I want to suggest that some teachers, when they have embarked on new kinds of trips, have really appreciated the 2-step, because upon initial approval, they could actually advertise it without being fully committed to producing it. And they'd learn, are they going to get a groundswell of interest? In which case, then they'd go further and do the many, many hours of work of planning. So sometimes that initial approval allows them to start talking about it without making promises that they may or may not be able to keep.
Agreed. And I have to say, I just really want to thank the teachers. I have had students participate in different, trips and all of that. And these teachers are with our kids 24/7 and they take care of them if they get sick. They take care of them if they're afraid, if they're crying, if they're homesick. All of these things still happen when they are in other countries. So we certainly can't thank you enough for that. And the amount of time and preparation that went into this. That should be noted too. This is way above and beyond your job description, which we appreciate. So thank you for bringing this to our kids of CCHS.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
And we will vote at the end of our meeting. So stay tuned.
But you don't
Thank
have to stay on.
Stay on. We'll let you
Very
know.
much.
Dr. Hunter will let you know. How about that?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, moving on. I think that was excellent discussion. So school committee and superintendent relations. I actually don't have anything to update tonight, so we can look forward to an update later on, but there's nothing new to report. And on to item C, which is school committee goals. And I am going to turn this over to Alexa Anderson.
All right, everybody. I emailed you all this afternoon. Stabs at goals. So I appreciate everybody who submitted our homework assignment essentially with taking a pass at a communications goal as well as a budget goal. I sought to sort of synthesize everybody's input and took a stab. So we've got a communications goal suggestion of the school committee will improve internal and external communications through refinement of processes to ensure we're operating in good faith with one another and our constituents. That goal will have, I think, 5 action steps that I think we should sort of discuss and agree to and have a good understanding of, do we have the bandwidth to do these all these things? And are we going to commit to them? So first one is develop new communication channels to share the business of the committee with the communities we represent. Some sub bullets to that would be post and host. I didn't write that. A consistent schedule of community coffees that would be open to anyone who wants to come and talk about issues with us. We talked also about having more formal interaction with the PTGs. That had been kind of best practice, where the committee would proactively say we would like to come and join your meetings, so that again, it's just increasing our access, increasing the community's access to us. And then we were discussing other community groups that we might be proactive about meeting with. And I came up with all the groups so I think it might warrant more discussion, because I'm thinking we already have liaisons with Select Board Finance, League of Women Voters. We don't have anything formal. Concord DEI Commission, PEG Access, Concord Carlisle Adult and Community Ed. So I'm looking for any other groups with whom we might proactively reach out to. Then we also talked about increasing subscribers to the school committee distribution list. I think we might. Can I just go over it and then we'll discuss? What?
In the queue.
Huh?
She's going to go over.
Oh, yeah,
everything
yeah.
first,
Yeah. And then we'll get, you want to get in the
discussion.
queue? Got it. Okay. So then increase subscribers to the school committee distribution list. We can talk about like a realistic percentage. I think we talked last meeting about leveraging the superintendent's distribution list, potentially putting, some kind of frequently school committee update not very often, but sometime in the school committee, in the superintendent's messages to the community. Review other school committees' actions and procedures to aggregate their best practices vis-a-vis information sharing, both internal and external. Review, finalize, commit to our protocols and practices, and then continue to use our facilitator, Rob Evans, to analyze our progress with respect to internal and external communications and take his recommendations. So Sarah, I saw you first, if you wanted to start the discussion.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to that identify other community groups to meet with.
Yeah.
And I don't know how well everyone at the table here is familiar with Carlisle School Committee happenings, but last year we had some turmoil, for lack of a better word, over this exact question of how to properly engage with outside groups, because maybe you speak with one group and then another group comes and they want to speak, and it gets, if we're talking about sending one person to go and hear and report back, that's one thing. But if you're talking about sending the whole committee or somebody to speak on behalf of the committee, it can get very complicated. So I would just advise that we tread carefully there, because we don't want to disappoint anybody. We want to, and so the way that Carlisle landed is that if there are groups that want to engage in more profound conversations with us, that they can write to the school committee and say, I'd like to present on a certain topic and dialogue on this topic, and like, here are my goals from the conversation. Like, this is what I hope to achieve. So
I think that's really good feedback. I wonder if we could take like a quick straw poll. We can easily take out that action item if we think that might be a little dicey based on people's past experience with trying to make that part of an action step. I think that's appropriate. Does anyone have any thoughts on that, about removing that? Anyone think that's a good idea? Hands? Yes, yes.
And I think perhaps maybe the discussion was, I would like to see us get these groups on our mailing list. I would like to see us invite them to our coffees. And I would like to see us produce a product, some kind of newsletter and or report at the end of our year, where they are interested and educated as to what the school committee does for the community. One notable group that I think we should try to liaise with is the 2025 committee in Concord, which is very active regarding the 2025. And I hope that the schools will be part of that.
Yeah, actually, Diane reached out to me yesterday. So.
Well, the committee as well.
Well, I'm just giving you an update.
Yeah, so I mean, maybe you could redirect her to, one of the chairs, and we can maybe better understand what the 2025. I don't really know the details, but I know they're very active.
Yeah. So could we, in that spirit, I like that. So it seems like there might be soft consensus about chucking action sub bullet 3, which is, we already deleted it, which was about proactively reaching out to other groups, and instead replace that, Cynthia, with increase outreach to groups, community groups, and invite them to our subscriber list.
Yeah, and I'm not sure exactly how to do the mechanics of that, but there must be a way to do it.
Yeah, well, that's our action item, right? We'll figure it out.
Captured and increase subscribers to school committee distribution list. And
Or maybe, actually, we'll move that. Good point. So I'm gonna take that bullet out and move it to a sub bullet on this increased subscribers to school committee distribution list. I like that. And then we had a bullet that was post and host. I like post and host because I like it sounds good. Post and host, consistent schedule of community coffees. And then a sub bullet under that would be to proactively invite different groups. And we can probably do that via a simple email to those chairs.
Yep.
To those community coffees that we host.
So like the Concord Business Partnership.
Totally. Yes.
And then the DEI.
The DEI CAC.
Yes.
Yep. Awesome. So we can discuss, I think in between meetings, putting that big list together.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Um,
And if anybody has anything on the list, can you send it? Like, if you can think of a committee out there, send it, and then we can add it on, so we'll be
Yeah.
ready at our next meeting to have it on there.
that sound good?
Okay.
Okay, this is all really good. I like this. Okay, so then, okay, I guess I went through all of them. Anyone have any additions? Court?
Just back to the 2025 committee, for the new members. That's Concord's 250th. Is that right?
The
Yeah,
revolution.
the Revolution's 250th, not Concord's. Yeah, we already did Concord. Yeah, yeah. I am one of many members on many committees, and I'm on the community participation subcommittee. So de facto, I'll be one of your links with it. I'm sure other people will as well.
The other three educators, history, an elementary, middle, high school. I don't know what subcommittee they're on, but.
There's a raft of committees, yeah,
Cool.
all highly choreographed by the powers that be. Yeah, great, yeah, no surprise. So a number of us. I would like to look a little more deeply at the reference to facilitator Rob Evans. One, because I think we already have a paid consultant who's our communications consultant. And two, if we're going to bring on a second one, how are we going to coordinate the two? And what do we have to line item that for? Because I don't think that was anticipated.
Wait, say that again, Court. I couldn't hear you. When you look that way, it's hard.
I'm curious how.
Just the last.
And I'm curious about the costs for a second consultant in this arena.
So I was thinking in this vein, this was my addition, where we are already teed up to have a meeting with Rob in November. And I was thinking that would be a good way to leverage this goal to something that is actionable, because we're teed up to do it anyway. And so if I think this is an opportunity to give a little bit more focus to that meeting, to say, how are we doing? So that we can all assess and provide him with our feedback. How are we doing on our internal communications? Because I think this goal is about both internal and external communications. So we're having that meeting with him anyway. So I think this goal would allow us to provide like a laser focus for that meeting. That was sort of my idea. So it wouldn't be anything new necessarily, but just leveraging this goal to give some focus.
I'm simply making the point that we would now have two paid consultants in this communication side of things, albeit one primarily external. So I was simply making the case that maybe we'd want some kind of coordination.
Between the two consultants.
If
Or,
they're both working on communication on our behalf, yes.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Carrie?
I wonder if it might be more clear if we break the action steps into what are the action steps to improve internal communications and what are the action steps to improve external communications, and that might clarify.
Okay, I can do that. So hold on. Well, that's our only one with extra. But
I think that, we could, because I don't think there is a link between Rob and
our external communications,
external,
100%.
but I can
Okay.
understand why.
To analyze our progress with respect to our internal communications and make
Yeah.
recommendations. Sarah?
I don't know if anybody else attended the goal setting learning lunch last Friday. No.
MASC.
MASC, yes. No, just me. So Dorothy hosted it.
They don't provide.
You can feed yourself. Instead of screaming while you wait. Yeah. But Dorothy Presser, it was similar to what she discussed with us, but she spelled it out a little bit, or maybe I just heard it better the second time. And so based on how she described it, I made a spreadsheet of, because she said you start, you name your goal, right? You start with your mission, right? How does this relate to the mission for your district? What are the specific action items then what is the output, which she says like as measured by, and then ends with outcomes. And I liked how she phrased this, like, how will things look different when this goal is reached? And I just wanted to propose that as
We
as
did
a way
that in our first session, the how
organizing.
will what will look
Right,
different.
But I'm saying I'd like to propose that when we put our goals together, ultimately, that we organize it that way rather than in the bullet points, like with the specific action items that's associated with the goal, with what the
So the
product.
format looks different, which we had some discussion about that with Dorothy over the summer. So, yeah.
Yeah,
So we can
and like,
take that into
so that you very
consideration.
clearly see what are the
Mhm.
actions we're supposed to do?
Yeah.
What is the output of those actions? Like, what's the
The
product?
outcome, yeah.
Right? And like, and what is the aspiration? What change do we hope to implement? And so I tweaked it a little bit when I did my thing and said like, what's either the relation to the self-evaluation or to our mission and values?
Cool. Anyone else on this first?
So I guess bullet 3, review other school committee actions and procedures to aggregate best practices. So that could be a lot of work.
Yep.
We might want to name some of those things, like our school committee reports that we sort of publish is it usually every meeting or every other?
I mean,
month?
or
They
if,
get
or if
pushed
we
out
think
to
it's too
subscriber
much
list.
in this first year of this goal, we can also table it.
No, I think we should, we're producing them because they have value and they represent us. I
Right,
think
but we
should-
also have to evaluate, I think, what we have bandwidth for. So,
But we're doing it. I'm saying, we're doing these reports, right?
yeah,
Might as
So-
well share it.
Pardon me?
I say, might as well share it, like you're saying.
Well, I mean, I think are they providing the value that we want? That's what I'm saying. So it would be a good thing to, I think, for us to look at. If we're investing in them and sending
Isn't that
to-
the review? Isn't that the goal?
Yeah.
Oh, so you're agreeing with the goal?
Yeah, I just think we
Okay.
should list things, specific things,
Oh,
like
I
our
see.
reports, our committee reports, right?
okay, so
Or
our
whatever that-
external, so our external committee reports.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Don't
sorry.
watch everybody else's school committee meetings and try to figure out what does everybody do that you'd
Yeah,
want to do,
got
but
it.
figure out a couple of target things that I think what you're saying, like find like a couple
That
of
we're
things that
already
we want to look
doing,
at,
you
right?
know,
Or that,
yeah,
that we look
yeah.
at. that we do.
I'm not saying
How do other
create
people
them
do
that
it?
we don't have them.
Got it, got it. I
Right,
see.
So
Got
what
it.
is our consultant doing for us? And then what are we getting out of it, what we want? And is the community getting out of it, what we want them to get out of it? I guess, does that make
Yeah.
any sense?
Yep.
And I think one thing we can do to add to our subscriber list is we could reach out to, I've always had this idea to get a bunch of school committees together and talk about, how do you reach your subscriber list? What's your best practice of doing it? Is it, Lori sending out on our Twitter to doing, X, Y, or Z? Is it a subscriber list push out? Is it a school committee website revamp where we can have newsletters on it? So that's certainly something, all things that we can talk about throughout this goal and
So
add
we
to
could,
it.
so would a sub bullet then under bullet 3 be meet with nearby districts?
I think it would be helpful and I would love to have like a, we talked a little bit about this in our DEI committee, like of having some type of professional development for school committees and maybe MASC would do like a local workshop for a bunch of various school committees to get together. Because I do find it's really helpful when you go to their trainings and you have time at lunch I happen to go to a training that was in person to talk to other school committees about what they're doing. And maybe, we could do something like that.
So we could have it say, meet with nearby districts, nearby school committees to discuss best practices vis-a-vis communications potentially facilitated by the MASC.
Mhm.
Okay, I like that.
Does this body have a social media platform?
No,
No,
Is that
It's-
something that will be worked on? Is it
the
something that you can-
MASC, which is the sort of governing body, so that the trick with social media and why they don't recommend it is because we can't deliberate or anything like that. You can't, once people start commenting. So let's say I put a post out.
School committee has to approve trips.
Yes, school committee
Yeah.
loves trips. We've approved them. Now, let's say all of a sudden people start commenting, I hate trips. Trips are terrible. I hate Ecuadorians. You know,
Right.
I don't want people going.
You can turn off the comments.
You can, you could. So I don't know.
We've kind of been advised not to do it as a school committee, and I think it's.
Can you turn off comments on all social
Yeah.
media?
You
You
turn
can turn off comments, and I think it becomes a slippery slope of who's going to push it out. So one of us would be pushing it out. So somebody's job is going to be to push it out. What's the feedback we're going to get on it? And we have a subscriber list that we do push things out to already. So other school, now during those luncheons that I talked about, I talked to other school committees, they've gotten themselves into real trouble on social media. And it has become a bit of a headache to school committees, and especially in recent past masking, that was a big issue when there was the school committee would just deliver, masks to be worn, and it was like a free for all within the community. So I think social media definitely has a place in all of this, but the safer way to push it out is definitely through the superintendent's messaging and what is happening in the district. And a lot of the things that we have here, it's their public meetings, people can come to them. We're very open about it. So
But I think
that's
it is
where I
worth
landed.
talking
We're
about,
talking
especially
about.
now that things have evolved where you can turn off comments.
Yeah.
I think the bigger issue, right, is who's doing it. And then what happens if, let's say, we give the assignment to Sharon, and now I don't like what she's put on, so we have to
decide what
it's
to put on.
like, there are constraints of this body, which we have to discuss things. It has to be open. So a lot of the fun of social media would be if we're all discussing, Sharon's going to post a picture of a dolphin and say, the school committee loves science. Well, then everybody knows in advance. So I think there are tricks to it, but I do think we could discuss it
Yeah, definitely.
and keep it on our radar.
It would be you just to share information.
Yeah.
Like, again, you were talking about these trips and you want to get it to parents, and then you pretty much approve who's on your page.
Yeah,
So
I
again,
know.
it'd be the towns between Concord and Carlisle, the parents that go to both school, the students, where you can get, like TikTok, the students love TikTok. If they're working on a specific project, like what they just presented to us, imagine having that uploaded onto TikTok, and before you know it, every single student within both districts. are like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
you're
yeah."
right.
And again, it's just like you said, you just want to engage, and if we control what actually goes on those platforms, and which you can, it kind of takes away from a lot of the things that you're saying where people are commenting
Yeah.
negative, because you control the population who's on there. It's not open to like anybody. You're not gonna have a guy from Texas who just jumps on there. It'd be more controlled. And of course, you have an administrator who would sit there and actually approve who we accept and who we don't accept. And of course, this body would approve whatever is put on there, like these trips. I'm looking at trips over, I'm like, it is expensive, but again, there's someone out there who might be able to fund or sponsor a child so they can have the experience. But how do we get the information out? When, like for myself, you send me an email, it might take a week for me to respond.
Yeah.
But if you put up a TikTok post, my daughter's like, Dad, did you see it? I'm like, see what? So. it's food
No, I
for
think it's
thought.
100% worth talking about and pursuing.
That's something we can look at what other school committees, how.
Yeah.
People manage it.
Totally.
Figure out a best practice there.
Yeah.
All right. So do we feel pretty good about our first pass at this communications goal? Any other feedback, comments, thoughts?
What are the next steps? Do you just,
So I'm gonna pop this out to everybody with to incorporate all of our revisions and discussions tonight, and then we would ultimately approve the goal at the next meeting. Yeah. So everyone makes sense. Court.
Would we approve goals individually or wait until we?
Ideally, we'd like to approve them all, so we're gonna go next to the budget. Yeah, and we won't have all of them. We could entertain, and I might suggest, because some of this work is timely, I might suggest approving our professional practice goals together at the next meeting, if we get through sort of this budget one. And then our more student-centric goals separate and apart from that, but we can certainly discuss that. I think that could be a good idea so that we can get started on our own professional practice initiatives. especially because communication is timely and we might want to get hopping, and because our next professional practice goal is around budget, which is also timely. Cynthia.
So another way that we have a good way to interact with other school committees is at the November conference. I think it's in person only this year. I don't think you
is.
can attend remotely, and I'm sure they're gonna have sessions on everything we're talking about.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't know if anybody's going to.
We're gonna
We're
both
going.
go.
Yeah.
Okay,
We were the only ones that responded that we were available. So,
well, people can still register.
yeah.
Yeah, so I haven't necessarily decided that I'm not going. I just,
Oh, okay. We were, okay.
I didn't hit the early bird.
We were just hoping to get, we were able to leverage the early responder
Right.
or whatever.
When is it?
November.
November, like 3rd to 5th,
Fifth,
maybe, I
calendar.
think. I think it's like around.
You could send out to everybody
Yep.
just the information.
Okay.
especially Since our
Yep.
new members might not have
Yeah,
it.
and if anyone else does want to attend, and we would
We
need
can
to know
resend it
that.
out.
Yeah, we'll resend it out.
Yeah.
Just so we can get registered.
No, I
and-
understand.
Yeah, okay.
Cool.
All right. So,
Sorry, this is
Yeah.
like probably not critical, but I wonder if we actually do want to say by X%, like increase.
oh, yeah, we need to talk about that. Thank you. Do we have a goal about what percentage we think is reasonable to?
Oh, do you know what it is?
Well, do we know what
We don't know what
Right,
it is.
Oh.
What's the question?
It's about. the
How's it
subscriber
going?
list, somewhere around it.
as of 15 minutes.
So what's the total
Probably
population?
We're 60 now. No.
For, how many families in the district, how many residents in the?
Yeah, like the total population.
There's about 18,000 people that live in Concord, thereabouts,
How
right?
about the school?
Carlisle, 3,000, how many? How many?
3,500.
Oh. So we're looking.
Well, and I think that
I don't
so
know.
Dr. Hunter pushes this out, and so she pushes out in our weekly newsletters, but also you have, townspeople that will join on our list. I'm
Yeah.
on a subscriber list for other boards.
Yeah.
So, we'll keep at it. And some people.
Well, just to go to the percentage piece, because if, like you said, if we're at 5,000 in Carlisle, another 18 here in Concord, and we're only at 400 and let's say 450, I mean, we're barely scratching,
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so maybe
10%.
it's not a percentage, maybe it's a number.
Maybe 1,000.
Like 50%. How about a percentage? How about like a percent?
Also, I mean, I know when I've managed websites and communication things for organizations, there's been a way to track engagement, right? Do we have a way? Because it's fine to have a subscriber. It's great to have a subscriber who opens
Clicks.
your email,
Yeah.
right? Or follows a link. So is there a way that we can?
Is there a way? we can
Yeah,
do that?
yours go out via MailChimp. There's all sorts of
Okay,
analytics. on the
Oh, it does go
backside.
via
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, so
Data
So we can start
analytics.
looking at
There's
those,
lots of
so
analytics
actually,
you
so
can get
maybe
from
we
that.
can.
Facebook's does it for you. They give
Okay.
you a weekly report saying you had 10,000 engagements and
How many people are trying?
right, how many new people got on your page and what they're
So we'll
looking
be able to
for.
track this goal, which is good. It
Yeah.
is a measurable goal.
Yeah, and
Anyone want to throw out a number, percentage? Anyone?
100%.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, that's
Double it?
Yeah, at least double. 9 do it.
All right. So wild. Okay,
It's
let's do
a
it.
goal. It's our
It's a
goal.
goal. You're right.
I
It's our-
also
okay.
think that, like all these first 3 bullets. No, sorry, the first 2 bullets are all saying the same thing. So I think that actually the goal should be, or the action step should be develop new communication channels. to share the
Increase
business of the
subscribers as a
committee.
sub bullet, you mean?
No, to share business of the committee with the communities we represent. Well, I don't know, but I feel like increased subscriber is the goal, and then develop new communication channels to share. I don't know, that's the measurable. But it's not a separate bullet, because all of these can go into that same bullet.
So like. Show me what you want to do.
And can I just remind
like
the
in,
committee
like-
that we've been at this
Yes.
for.
Yeah,
5
I know.
minutes.
Sorry,
I
that
don't know.
was-
We got
I-
7 minutes per-
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I just one more suggestion? Can we get a QR code? I go to a lot of the sporting events, so it's like when I engage with a parent, I don't have a flyer, but
Subscribe to our thing.
I'll have it like on the back of my phone and they can
Love this.
scan it and it automatically
idea.
takes them
Yep.
to like
Loving you.
Yep.
where they
Takes
can
it right
register.
there.
QR code. Okay, all of this we're gonna
So
get.
like, so why don't you try to distill all this various feedback? It might take us, and then we could do a spoken hub, maybe if you could just send it out and then.
So I'm gonna send this out to you guys. I could probably do it by the end of the night because I've done it live. All right, want to go to budget next? Everyone feel
Yep.
pretty good about where we are? Straw poll, we feel pretty good about
Pretty good.
communications? Yes, no, okay.
Mhm.
All right, budget. So synthesizing feedback. I came up with establish common knowledge of budget procedure as it relates to school committee responsibility. Our two action steps were to schedule a budget workshop with the MASC. The timing, I just put in as early November, totally negotiable. I was just thinking to ensure alignment of our practices with MGL requirements and MASC best practices. And then I also think we should leverage our new assistant superintendent of finance and operations so that we understand sort of his methodology, because it might be a little bit different than what we're used to as it relates to budget preparation. I'm going to write and presentations. What do we think? Cynthia.
So I think I would add an initial button, bullet, excuse me, to add a timeline as soon as possible, our budget timeline, because we usually have that by now.
Okay.
You know, like this has to happen now, this has to happen,
Right.
Carlisle, Concord, the hearings, the presentations to the finance committees, the you know, the budget deadlines.
We have we can add to it, but we sent out the list of all the meetings and what's coming up with FinCom and then the budget development timeline. Okay.
Okay.
So
Can you
when,
resend
Yeah.
the schedule, the meetings?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like a
Email.
I understand we should like a budget calendar to know that this is due, when it's due.
Yeah.
Stuff like that, because
Perfect.
that will help keep people on track.
so when we meet with Dr. Hunter at our chairs meeting, we'll discuss this and we'll have a timeline that we'll get out to you.
Then it
guys.
would then we could just
Yeah.
decide when best to schedule these things
Perfect.
earlier or later.
Okay.
And then
Great.
one other nuance I would say is the way that the FinComs in Carlisle and Concord operate. I'm not sure how we get that little
Piece of
piece of
information out
knowledge to
there.
people in a condensed fashion without saying, go watch every meeting last year.
Yeah, 'cause they are very.
We,
A lot of meetings.
yeah, all right,
We can work on that. through the
develop
process.
understanding of finance
The
committee
guidelines and all that.
guideline
Yeah,
formula.
yeah.
Something like
Or
that,
just the
okay.
process and the time.
Process.
Yeah,
Okay, hold on.
because Carlisle does it a
Right,
little.
help me
different.
write it. Develop understanding of finance committees. Guideline process.
Yeah.
And setting,
And budget, guideline and budget process has. that.
guideline and process. Okay, I
And
like.
budget process, you know what I'm trying to say. It's
Mhm.
not their budget, but how they.
And when I,
review.
when I send this out, when everybody looks at it, if you know, we're a team. Be
Yeah.
critical, revise it, rewrite it, I don't, this is, it's all good for me.
Good.
Okay. Great, so this is awesome. I feel like, anyone else have any comments? Sorry.
I don't want to argue for any change in language, but I would note
You
that
can.
to my way of thinking, the budget goal of establishing common knowledge is actually an objective. The real goal is to exercise our fiduciary responsibility on
Mhm.
behalf of the district and the towns.
Mhm.
All right.
So
Wait, say that again. But this is a professional practice
Practice
goal,
goal.
so this is an internal goal for us. Does that make?
that's why I won't insist on a change. I just
Yeah,
want to
okay, got
remind
it.
people that we have this overarching goal
Yeah.
that is not as small as making certain we all agree on practices.
Right. Well, that's a
That's our job.
responsibility, a duty, not a goal necessarily.
Yeah.
That's part of our job duties,
Yeah.
that specifically.
Normally, when we do all of our goals, in the end, we'll have sort of our reach goals, but we'll also have our core functions
Right.
included in the goals, right? Like like one of our goals is to produce a budget to town meeting, right? That's,
Yeah.
it's a goal that we know we'll meet, but we keep it in that list of
Yeah.
goals because it's an objective for the,
Sure.
it's
And
a
I-
deliverable. we
Yeah,
know
and I
to
think
town.
we're trying to move away from that so that we are differentiating between what our job responsibilities or job duties are versus what our goals are. So that's very clear. We can maintain both documents, but I think they're very different
Yeah, and we
things.
can have these are our core functions and you just
Sure.
list them, right?
Yeah,
And
which
then-
are
and
in
these
our- yeah.
goals. And
Sure.
those are different things. Yeah.
All right, anyone else? Going, Sharon? Oh, you looked like you were ready. to- Going once, twice, All right, moving on.
Moving on,
Thank
and
you
I'm-
guys. This was awesome. Oh, we have 1 minute and 45 seconds.
Okay,
remaining.
Mary, I'm gonna be a better timekeeper on this
Okay.
discussion next month. Sorry, I mean, I just want to be cognizant of
No,
our
we are.
professionals that
This-
are here with us, and
Thank you, Trixie.
I apologize. So I'm just gonna set my clock. All right, so we're gonna move on to school committee practices and protocols. You should have all received both documents in your agenda overview. There are links on the agenda if you're on the agenda to both of those. We've gotten some feedback. And Alexa is also going to lead us through this discussion, so I'm going to defer to her.
And
And tell you your 15 minutes.
Oh my God. Can we start with protocols? You'll see we have 15 protocols this year. Many are the same, some are new. I'm gonna go through them one by one and sort of talk to you guys about what the feedback is on each one and how we incorporated it, or in some instances kind of did not. Am I on this yet?
And can I also suggest that we'll go through it one by one? And if
Yes,
there's
and
any
then we'll discuss.
discussion, if there's any discussion on that, just in the interest of time,
Yeah.
not like, don't wait till the end. Let's just do it
Right.
one at a time.
Okay,
Okay.
so goal one, we had no feedback on. Goal 2, we had no feedback on. Goal 3, we did have some feedback about sort of specifically what Sarah was talking about, the differentiation between our job responsibilities and our goals. So, we could offer putting a job responsibility overview in there, but our goals are different. We had a lot of conversation this morning. Oh, my timer. 1 minute, 45 seconds. It's up on my last bit. We did have some discussion with Dorothy Presser, our MASC representative this morning, who said they should be clearly differentiated. Goals should be separate and apart from core functions. And she's more than happy to speak with anybody about that. Okay, school committee.
Sarah.
I had
yeah.
one other comment
sure.
that didn't make it in there, I guess.
Oh, sorry.
About the numbering of 1 to 3 annual goals, when right now we're talking about 4.
Oh,
So
yep.
just wanted some
Okay,
clarity.
I'm
on
gonna
that.
say, how about I change it to up to
Up to
4?
4.
Up to 4.
Everyone good with that?
Yeah, and I also suggested that we add the word smart in there, just to remind us to do the
Sure.
SMART goals.
I'm good with that. Hold on, let me go to my, hold on, I'm just gonna put this.
Want me to just take notes?
Yes, I'm
gonna
gonna
do
write
it.
up to 4 annual SMART goals.
Mhm.
Good, fine, done. Okay, moving forward. On protocol 4 had no comments from anyone. Protocol 5. The chairs will ensure that all members are kept abreast and informed of members' questions. I think you guys have started to see that come out. I think we're going to do that via email if anyone wants that further articulated in this goal. I don't know if that has any unintended consequences of being so specific, but that was one of the feedback pieces. I didn't change it so that we could have flexibility in that. But we can discuss that. 6 had no comments, 7 had no comments. Oh no, 7 had comments. Oh yeah, there was a typo that will get corrected. Chain of accountability. We had a couple of questions on that. This is number 11. So,
I thought we were in 7.
none of these, sorry, 8, 9, and 10 had no comments on them from anybody.
So on 8, what would happen here? We've never had this. Efficient and well moves a question when discussion becomes repetitive. So that would be a vote to stop discussion and move the question.
If there is a question, I saw this specific protocol in a lot of different.
But I'm saying it takes a vote of the committee to stop discussion.
Sure, but
Yeah.
yes, someone can, yes,
Yeah.
someone can move to call the question or move to call the vote or whatever it is. So yeah, that would just be a reiteration of that and to make sure that we are practicing, good time management and they're,
But that's really nothing new. It's Robert's rule.
No, sure.
Yeah, okay.
But I think it's
We're
just.
stating it.
Yeah,
That's
we're
the new
stating
is
it
that
and
we're
I
stating
think,
it.
yeah. And I think too that, Oh, I lost my train of thought. I don't know. We saw it in a lot of places. I thought it was a good one because, you know, meetings, it was interesting. I read somewhere, meetings are for action, not, you know, endless pontification and discussion. So I thought that was a really good thing to just sort of reiterate as we work towards time management. Which, you know, I think was a goal for us last year, time management, and I think we did pretty well with it. And so this is just sort of another way to reiterate it.
So 8 is no change. We're going with no change.
Yeah,
No
no,
change.
you're not suggesting a
Change.
change.
No, I'm
Okay.
saying,
I'm just taking notes, sorry.
Sorry. Okay, so we had a couple of questions on this number 11, the chain of accountability.
can I just change that eight?
Okay. Oh, sure.
The school committee will strive instead of chairs.
Oh, sure. Yeah, fine. I
Okay.
can strike that.
Yeah,
Um,
we're all part of that.
Yeah,
we
you're
all are
right.
part of it.
You are right.
Yeah.
I think that's fine. It always sort of falls to the chairs. People kind of think it's, but anyway, so yeah, that's fine. I like, we can strike that. Anyway, anything else on 8, 9, or 10 that wasn't already communicated? Okay, 11. So the chain of accountability. This was another one that we found in district after district after district after district. And I think this isn't about, there were some questions like, oh, shouldn't we refer the constituent to the chair who would then refer to the superintendent? This isn't about members facilitating interaction when a constituent comes to you. This is just about ensuring that when a constituent might come to you and say, as Tracy's managed this week, the parking at the high school is a disaster. Tracy
For
doesn't
example.
say, or just, sorry.
Sorry.
This is not about saying, oh, I know, you know, I'll go talk to the superintendent about it. This is about saying, oh, I hear your concern.
Sorry.
If you have a concern about this, the two people you might reach out to are Mike Mistrula or
Brian Miller
Katie.
and Katie Stahl. And I will say, just for clarity
Yeah.
purposes, the parking's going really well at the high school, as all reports, just so everybody knows. I think it was the initial frenzy of change. So it's going really well. Students are parking. So far, so good. For anyone that's listening.
That's true.
Sorry, it became a little dramatic.
Sorry. So that's what that refers to. It's just to ensure that you are passing along the right person rather than trying to self-facilitate. We got resounding feedback that no one liked the word timeout, which is totally fine. We're going to revise
That's in
that.
number 12.
That's
I'm
in number
just
12.
Clarifying, sorry.
We're going to revise that to all members, representatives, and the superintendent should raise a point of order to pause the meeting and address any uncivil behavior. Or alternatively, we can raise a point of order to pause the meeting. We had no feedback on 13, 14, or 15. So I know you can't see these changes, but does anyone have additional thoughts or discussion? Looking pretty good. All right. So I'm going to send you guys additionally the protocol document that hopefully we'll be able to approve, that will incorporate all the changes that we discussed. And for vote possibly next
At our next meeting.
All right. I know I'm kind of hustling through this. Is everyone okay with the pace?
Yes.
Good, be
I love
honest.
The pace. We're into it only 8 minutes. You have 7 minutes left.
Okay. When we talked about protocol, so now we're moving into our practices document. So feedback included. I synthesized this all into a document. Where am I? Okay. Regular business meetings, other business meetings are at the discretion of the chairs. We give the overarching schedule to the committee. It is not something we vote on. It's just sort of a courtesy copy. We try to do it quickly after the new committees are seated. And things such as workshops, forums, and executive sessions are ones that sort of can come up for various reasons. So that's why we had they're scheduled at the discretion of the chairs.
And can I just, while we're all sitting here in this room, there's been some discussion. Tonight we started at 6 o'clock. I just want to ask people, is 6 a better start time than 6:30? Like, well, we have everybody captive in the room. I think we should maybe just quickly just take a 6 easy, 6:30. Anyone have a preference? Just go around the room 6 or 6:30. I'll just do it.
Either.
Can I think about it? Can you come
Yeah,
back?
sure.
Either. It totally depends on what the week is.
I know,
Just
I agree,
always-
I agree. Cynthia?
Either.
Domingos?
Same here.
Same thing. Can I ask our administrators also?
Earlier the better for us.
Earlier the better. Okay. So I actually would, if we've the majority of either's, can I propose 6 o'clock start times versus 6:30? Just to get us out a little bit earlier. I'll stay all night, but it just might. If it's an either or, I think earlier is better because I do think we should.
Yeah,
maybe
during
defer to our
COVID, we started
professionals
at like
that are here.
5:30, right?
So just to be careful about backing up for executive sessions because we can be in
Yeah.
the 5 range.
Okay,
yeah.
so
That's the only
Let's
reason.
go
Oh, no.
back to an executive session. What is the earliest someone can be here for a meeting? Now, this is just going to be, our representatives cannot come to executive sessions, so. What's the earliest we could start an exec session if needed? I'm just saying if needed.
We don't
Yeah,
have a lot of
30.
bargaining this year. We
Yeah.
don't have a lot of bargaining
Yeah,
and that's.
Usually.
so I'm
mean,
gonna
in
start
a
with
worse-
5 or 5:30.
I know you're looking at me. 'cause I know I have to hold out before.
That's
No,
okay.
I'm mostly good, but for example, like, I know that I have an out of town board meeting on the 27th that I drive back to town for that cramps my, you guys have seen
Right,
that one
right.
before, right?
5:30.
But we're okay because we don't
But-
have
but
an
we don't have
executive
an exec
session right
session
now
on
on the
the 27th,
27th. So just in
And
theory.
even as a worst case, if we started to have meetings at 6 o'clock on a regular basis, you could also just do the
We could
exec session at
push, yeah.
6 and start the meeting, right? I mean,
Yeah.
if
Yeah,
it
yeah.
doesn't work.
Yeah, yeah, we
people's
could do that.
schedule.
So yeah,
So
But
just
I-
like 5 or 5:30, like, does that feel okay to everybody
let's just say
Yes.
6.
5:30.
Yeah.
for exec session?
this.
So I'm
For
talking
the meeting
for the
started.
meeting starting at 6.
Yep. We just have to really socialize that because everybody in town has 6:30 in their head. So we just have to make it
Yeah.
very well
Posted on our social
communicated.
media.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'll amend this to say 6. Okay.
And if we don't agree, I mean, I'm just proposing something
Oh,
wild
yeah. Oh,
and
I
crazy
should
about
ask.
changing times. I think
Everyone
you should
have
ask.
that?
Cynthia brought up a valid point. You know, is the past practice, does the meeting start at 6:30 or at 6?
6:30
6:30.
forever.
So again, for something like that, where you have a community already accustomed to 6:30. Is that something that you just want to change on the whim, or is it something you want to do a little outreach?
Well, I guess my thinking on it, and I'll just give you my opinion, is sometimes we have teachers that come here too, like our teachers tonight, and the later like it just gives you a half hour wiggle room if they had to come, but
Yeah.
totally agree.
And-
Yeah.
No, oh,
Sarah?
sorry. Yeah, I might add that also, I think when the 6:30 practice, that's been around for a long time, predated Zoom, predated a lot of stuff. I think a lot of it was also to give members of the community an opportunity to get here in person to come and participate, which is now not as much of,
A burden.
Yeah.
it's not as much of a burden.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, because they can.
Because
Zoom.
they can
They
zoom
can
in.
Zoom.
Yeah.
Yep, Court.
I do think you're onto something though, and I think maybe we should, if we move to 6 o'clock, do it 3 meetings from now. So we have 2 meetings to
Right.
let the word.
All right.
And then
That's a good
nobody
idea.
can complain.
Like,
Yeah.
We got-
That's a good idea.
A little
Or
bit of
otherwise
notice.
we violate our own surprise rule.
Yes,
Perfect.
good point.
Okay,
Yep.
3. I like that.
Good.
Okay. Okay, hustling along. So in item 2, we have the goal is to distribute the agenda Thursday prior to each Tuesday. We're going to just replace that with 3 business days. To conform to with our other following sentence, which we talk about with 2 business days.
And recognizing it will be in draft form and there will potentially be changes. because it's 3 days ahead of time, because things might come up on the district's end.
Is there a cutoff date, a cutoff time?
Yes, so that we have to post our agenda 48 hours in advance, and we can make revisions to it at any point. But you guys will all get it 3 days ahead of time, so you can see what's coming on the agenda.
All right, moving forward.
On the executive session, like if you were to make an executive session, how much time do you have to provide notice on that?
Same.
Same.
48
Even to the
hours.
committee, like from a scheduling perspective, like if you moved the meetings to 6 and say you're having an executive session at 5:30, would you let us know 2 days? Like I know.
We'd let you
typically
know as soon as we
possible. Yeah.
possibly, because we would want to schedule it with you. We
Yeah.
would still ask you.
Yeah.
So we're always going to ask you, if we're going to have an executive session, I'll probably send an email that says, hey, we need an executive session. Can you guys make it at
5:30
Yeah,
or whatever.
right.
Okay. Yeah.
And in Carlisle, we do our executive sessions after.
After.
the
We used
business
to.
Meeting, so it's
Yeah.
also, I mean.
That's,
if-
it's
if-
an option.
If you
Yeah.
don't
Yeah,
have
if
other
we-
people coming
Yeah.
in, when you have other professionals coming for, if your lawyers, like if there's
Yeah.
somebody specific who needs to be there, then it's harder because who knows when the meeting
wants to be
connects,
right.
right?
Yeah, that's a good point.
But if it's
All right.
just us.
Yep.
Then
We have flexibility.
Yep.
Like that. Okay, moving on, we had no comments on 4. Moving on to 5. So we are at a point in time where our policy contradicts our handbook. Right now, our policies talks about public comment at the beginning of each meeting for an allocation of 20 minutes. So we did, we can discuss in the policy meeting, amending that policy to provide for additional public comment, but and in our handbook, it says length is at the discretion of the chairs. In our policy, it says 20 minutes. In our policy, it says opening the meeting. It should be done at the opening of the meeting. And they both say 3 minutes. So we should just rectify those. But for now, we're going to adhere to our policy, which is beginning of the meeting, 20 minutes. Okay.
Can I just say one thing?
Sure.
We've never asked for the topic of comment before. We just say, ask for name and address.
They were like way back. Remember
We
the
used
forms
to.
that used to say.
Well, I know,
topic,
but we're-
blue form.
yeah.
No, I know, but that's right.
We're so,
I think the rationale behind that too was for larger like Zoom meetings, if we can get topics. So I've noticed, for example, when we have big topics that have high interests, sometimes what happens is 5 people will make a comment about masking, right? You'll have 5 public comments. Then someone will pop in and come and talk about literacy, and then you'll see like a lot of hands go down of people who might have, so this way we can maybe group together. It's more for Zoom, I think, than anything else. People who are going to make like comments. And additionally, if we can see we have 50 people that are about to say the same thing, it's easier for us to, or we think are going to speak on the same topic.
how would you know in advance what the topic was?
Well,
They would put it in the chat.
Yeah.
Or similarly.
What if they're in the audience? I mean, I'm just
Oh.
trying to scale this. And our comment tonight had, 5 topics maybe?
Yeah.
So we could say,
Yeah, we
the
can-
topic, or
Yeah.
if it's multiple, just say
We can
multiple.
check it. Where
Right?
did I put that?
Do you
It's,
have like
in
an
number
intake
5.
form?
We used to.
We
do
used to
not.
have a form outside that if you had a topic pre-COVID, you would fill it out and you would hand it at the end of that table. And then we would call the person up based on.
Yeah.
And
We can check it.
one of the
Anyone want a
wonderful
straw
things
poll?
was the minutes would have that person's name spelled correctly.
Spelled correctly.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
suggest we tackle this in our communication schools.
Yes.
but to Cynthia's point, it could be difficult to manage. I'm happy to do another little straw poll. Should we just strike it?
But it's also a good way to capture information.
Yeah.
Like, if someone wanted to say something on Zoom and they can go to a link and they can put their information in and then turn around, you can actually go back to that person because you got an email, you got a phone number, you got exactly what they're looking to have addressed. And then again, like we're trying to increase communication, it'd be another layer to add to that communication piece. I'm just thinking, as an organizer.
Either way.
So the idea would be to bring back the form. All right. Why don't
We can see
we,
what other people do.
I have a
Why
good
don't-
idea
yeah.
to your point.
Yeah.
Why don't we strike it for now? Because it gets confusing. And I will add that, like what you're talking about, potentially the discussion in a communications goal about adding the form and capturing information. Does that work for everybody?
Yeah, yeah, we
So I'm
can
gonna
look at sort of
strike.
practices of other
Yeah.
committees and see how other people manage it.
Perfect. Yeah. So I'm striking topic of comment per Cynthia's,
Some people require you to register before the meeting.
right. No, I know
Yeah,
it's really
Yeah.
varied. So we were trying to make it as low impact as
Yeah.
possible while getting more. That's what sort of I came up with, but
Okay.
yeah, so we're gonna strike it. You'll see that, and then we're gonna put something in it. We're gonna add to the communication goal. Okay, guys.
And we are at 20 minutes.
Yep, okay. Oh my
Sorry.
God.
We're almost done.
Okay, and so, and actually, that was it. There was one question about differences between meeting types. I sent you guys all an email with advice from Dorothy on that, so I hope that clarified the final question on our practices document.
Are we actually going to use a consent calendar? I mean, I'm
I
fine.
think we
I
should.
think we should.
I think
Okay,
for the
tell us, give us examples in,
like an example, like when we're approving, let's say like some donations, a staff enrollment, things that generally like could be grouped together that are generally fairly
just so we
non-controversial.
acknowledge the donation. That's the one like thing I like to do.
Yeah.
Oh,
of
yeah. We
course.
would,
Okay.
right. Oh,
Okay.
always, yeah, always.
We can do that in like.
Because when we get donations, typically they do come to the meeting and they, so we would have it in
Right.
discussion and then the vote would just be.
Okay.
Okay. Everybody
Sure.
good?
Yeah.
All right.
Sure.
So I will put all those together for you guys for a quick look at, for a final read, and then we'll talk about them and hopefully approve them next week. Nice work, guys. Thanks.
I'm just gonna ask before we go on, does anybody want to break or do you want to just keep going forward? Does anyone need 5 minutes? No? Okay. All right, so moving on to DEIB and the policy meeting schedule. So we talked about our meeting schedules. We have those 4 meetings for DEIB meetings that will be, I think it's confusing when we have the concepts of workshops and workshop meetings. It's a workshop meeting, and the clarity from Alexa today, I think, really showed that. And we had a discussion with Dorothy about it this morning, and it is a varied meeting. It actually elevates it to be something that, that is all we're going to talk about at that meeting. So it won't be in the middle of a meeting like this where we're talking about everything else, or we won't add anything to it. They will be focused meetings. So that's what I am proposing, that we run the DEIB committee as a workshop, and the dates are on there. So you can take a look at it. Does anyone have any comments about that? Yes,
I have
Sarah.
a question about, like, so when you say the workshop, like the way I envision this, and I think it could be really good, which is, or want to hear, the way that I see it, yeah, as understood through the emails, was that basically, let's say the first workshop, the October 12th, is dedicated not to DEIB, but to a specific topic within DEIB. Like, we are going to talk about teacher, staff retention and hiring of diverse faculty, right? Like, that could be a topic, and an outside facilitator or somebody within the community, like, in that kind of example, like the teachers in the high school working on like somebody would come and facilitate the conversation, or do we not have it? Like, I'm just trying to understand.
The vision of
structure.
it is that we would, it's almost like, so Kristen will present at 6 of our school committees. Andrew will come to our DEIB focus meetings.
Okay.
And we're going to hear from Andrew on all topics of what we want to hear from, what he's going to present to us on the strategic plan. Like, I envision the strategic plan being the first thing that he presents to us, so we can really, again, push that out to the community. So it's not going to be an outside facilitator. This is going to be an in-house meeting with our professionals here.
Okay.
Okay.
Are these conducted through the chairs with a quorum expected?
The quorum would be expected because it would be a meeting of
Just
the
wanted
full
to be clear.
committee. Yep.
Thank
And
you.
so what we will need is we will need an RSVP before the meeting. So we ensure that we have a quorum.
But as there are workshops, there's no action
There's
item.
no action item.
Okay.
There's no voting.
I just want to make
It's
sure we
just
all
discussion.
understand the
And
structure of it.
and
Yeah.
a workshop, you'll have discussion. And we could make a recommendation to this same committee. So we'll all be on the workshop. We could make a recommendation to our full committee, but we will not take any votes in the workshop. It will
Yeah.
be discussion based.
So it's-
And they'll be proposed at the regular business.
It's just to provide time to have a more focused conversation that
Yes.
will enrich our action items at a further, possibly.
Yes.
Yes. Enrich our
Yeah.
action items at a
And
further
it's
date.
it's a great opportunity for Andrew to be with us because he is our DEIB director. And so for him to really kind of guide us through all the things that you talked about. So it's strategic plan, it's retention and hiring, it's, it's all topics.
Student experience.
Yep, it's all topics of choice. Perhaps we might have students at our meetings. I don't know, it's just going to be another meeting, a very tight meeting.
But you'll get an agenda, you'll get the AO about it and the agenda overview that so you'll get a schedule and what goes on in it.
So would there be students at this meeting? Just because the first couple of weeks, have been, challenging.
Yeah.
And I know, a couple of students have had, disturbing, issues at the schools. So are there gonna be sort of representation? Just 'cause I would like to hear from students what they're.
So it would be open to anyone, so everyone could come, but if there's something specifically happening at a school, I would refer that to Dr. Hunter, which it would be a school.
Well, no, just
situation.
overall, just the environment. I just think that, it's important for us to hear from the students
Students, yeah.
themselves
Yeah.
regarding this.
Yeah.
So not just specific, not just specific things that are happening, just overall, just the,
Yeah.
how the
Yep.
year's going, because it's been off to a rocky start.
Okay, and I think that would be helpful to hear the student voice. We do hear it at our regular meetings too, so it would be helpful to hear that in those meetings.
Yeah,
Sure,
I was
do
just gonna say
something, yeah.
the thing I like about this structure is that all of us are able to participate. I dialed into last year's diversity, equity, and inclusion meetings, and I found them to be really well run and interesting conversations, but I wasn't able to participate.
Yeah.
And I think this is such important work, and we have a lot of work to do in this space, that having this focused time where all of us can really be engaged in it together will be really great. So I like it.
Okay.
And the meeting, oh, go ahead, Sharon.
Just
a question, we have 4 workshops.
Yep.
on the schedule.
Yep.
Do we have the possibility of adding one based on circumstances that may arise, say student experience?
Mhm.
And we find that maybe we need one more. Do we have that flexibility?
Oh, definitely. I think we definitely do. I think, it's to get these dates on people's calendar first to ensure we have a quorum here. And then if we find that it's necessary to have more meetings, we certainly could add more meetings.
Okay, thank you.
Sarah?
The meetings will be recorded, right? And visible.
Well, I mean, that's something I don't know. We're not required to record
them
this
last year,
meeting
right?
and we didn't record last year. It's really, I don't know. It's up for
Right.
discussion.
Yeah.
It's certainly not a requirement, but we could record them.
I think that would be a good practice,
Mhm.
just in case someone wants to go back and actually listen and create a feedback and be able to give an input, further down the line. And of course, it's good documentation to just, put out there, this is what we're working on, this is what we talked about, and this is how we're moving forward.
And it really talks to equity and belonging, right? If people can't access it
Right.
physically, they have the opportunity not to participate per se, but at least to see it.
I'd be in favor of recording it because I don't want to have a discussion with anybody about why we didn't.
Right.
Because I wouldn't know how to do that.
Yep.
Hmm.
It's
Sounds
an
like a
open
YouTube
public
channel
meeting,
coming
so
up.
there we go. Okay, so that's where we're at with DEIB, and that does not require a vote. And then we move on to policy, and we do have a vote in our action items on policy. And I would like to appoint Alexa Anderson, Court Booth, Tracy Morano, Cynthia Rainey, Carrie Rankin, Sharon Witt, and Sarah Wilson to the policy committee. And I think that we all need to do work on policy. So I'm appointing the entire committee on policy. And I would also like to appoint, I've had an offer from Carrie Rankin to chair that committee. So that will be coming up in the votes. So I took the feedback of committees that people wanted to be on. And I do think that policy really needs to be all of us for this year.
So just a point of order, are you appointing or are you recommending?
It's in our
It's
policy
in our,
that
we appoint.
No,
I'm
you
appointing.
recommend and we vote.
Then why?
Yeah.
Then we vote. It's
We
an
vote.
appointment.
We're gonna
subject
vote on
to the
it, yes.
approval.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah, so I'm using the word appoint because it's in our policy and then we can vote on that. So that is food for thought in the action items. And if we want to have a little discussion about that before, we certainly can do that. Alexa?
Yeah, and just a point of clarification, because we have to operate with respect to a quorum, that's why we haven't appointed our representatives, because you, by virtue of your representative status, are excluded from the quorum. But you obviously are invited and encouraged to attend all of
Yes.
these meetings. So just to make
Yes.
sure it is not, we're not looking to exclude you by
No.
any means.
Thank
It's
you for
just
clarifying. I
with
had that in my
respect to a
notes. Sorry
quorum.
about that part. Yes.
So yeah,
Okay.
any
Any
discussion?
discussion about that? And again, policy meetings are open. They're open to the public.
I'm curious about the 10 a.m. How many people are going to often be unable to attend?
Oh, sorry.
That-
Yes, so we are gonna send a potential relook at that schedule. We might add a couple of evening meetings. That was also brought up, and I did get approval from Dorothy to do either evening or like late afternoon, which would be like 5 o'clock kind of meeting. She is open to that on a limited basis.
Can you put the dates up again?
Erin, could you put the dates up for those meetings? I think she's listening.
We can get you.
Oh, I'm
those
so sorry.
tomatoes.
Do
you want me to
They're in
text
the
them to you?
email. Yeah, they're in the email, but I can text it to you. I'll
I
text it
just
to you.
want to look
I
over.
can do it,
Yeah.
but I'm not gonna do it.
Okay,
fast.
that's okay. That's okay.
She
I
can
I think
have
we're
to take
verging
it
on a
back.
school committee Google
There she
Calendar.
goes.
There we go. Thank you, Erin.
I know, right?
So the dates are up there. And then what was also on this document, and it is not part of this discussion right here, but those sessions for the strategic planning meetings, which all are scheduled from 4 to 7, but we'll hear more about that from Dr. Hunter. So moving on to the superintendent's goals. Thank you, Dr. Hunter.
I'm gonna take a breath and let you take a breath too.
Sorry.
Got a lot done. And I'm gonna just offer highlights of my goals. You've got them attached to the agenda, so you can look at them. And I don't think there's any surprises here. A lot of this are continuations of work that's been ongoing and reflective of our strategic plan, our school improvement plans, and really all the, collective threads that really hold us together as a district and move us forward. So the first one is a student learning focused goal with the focus on special education. So we'll really be looking at the service delivery models that we're providing. Inclusion will be a big focus this coming year, professional development attached to that. Continuing to look at the intensive programs that we've created and the enrollment and needs of those kids, but also the criteria in which those kids are entering those programs and again, the PD that needs to go with it. Certainly looking at student data that's attached to the research-based practices with a focus much because of our discussions of the last year in reading achievement, and that'll be embedded in the discussions as we go forward as to the piles of data Kristen's going to bring you. And one big focus is the leadership structure. You were notified of a plan to create an assistant special education director of student services because of a resignation in the structure that we currently have. That is happening as we speak, making progress. We also have an interim director, so we need to, this time I can't keep her for a third year. So we're gonna actually have to make the plan to fill the permanent position, which is an important, big collective endeavor of all of us. In conjunction with Kristen and her office and Debbie too on the principals, MTSS is one of our driving discussions this year as we've implemented and monitored this plan for student success. So we're very deep into this right now, out training staff. Thanks to Kristen, she's traveling through staff meetings, looking at the screeners and tools that we have totally tidied up and are consistent among not only horizontally, but vertically. We'll always be looking at how this applies to the dyslexia guidelines and where we're strong in proactive work and making sure we're servicing students appropriately for their needs, and programs aren't going to now match those identified needs in a very intentional way that's been talked through. The third is to really look at student well-being, and I put this under student learning on purpose. We are convinced that if our students aren't well, socially, emotionally, and otherwise, we cannot get to the academics. So we're rebooting Challenge Success this year at the middle and high schools. We have YRBS, that's the Youth Risk Behavior Survey data. I feel strongly we need to do more follow-up surveys as well as year has goes on. We're focused on the equity audit right now, so we haven't been doing it this moment. We have replacement programs rolling out at K-5 for Open Circle, and just an ongoing value of how important this is to us. And Kristen will come with a really big, thorough plan that we've been vetting and talking about and talked on this morning, in fact. So professional practice goals that I'm naming, I'm of like mind of you and looking at communication and being purposeful about it, trying to not, get off of the COVID communication today aside, but you can see I'm working really, I think, to shift that direction, and the newsletter to come back to school, the format of the emails. I'm being really purposeful about social media, to Mingos's point. It's such a great messaging tool, and it can capture things we don't have another forum for necessarily, a lot of positive activities and events and kids, a lot of kids. So trying to be purposeful about that. And I held a virtual coffee where no one came. So we're going to keep working on the effectiveness of that. Mary came, I think Alexa popped in. We had one other person. He or she didn't want to talk. So we're going to shift it. 5 o'clock's not a good time of day, come to figure out. So we're going to try again in the morning and be available, at least accessible. I don't know, there's some good news in that, I suppose, too. Right? If hundreds of people come, I know people have hot topics. If
5 o'clock
nobody
would be the
comes,
perfect time.
Yeah.
People had really important things to say.
we'll keep working at that.
It's good.
Student engagement is a big focus of ours. So we're collecting common evaluation goals among the teachers and educators, fostering innovative learning, focusing leadership meetings, and teaching and learning. We did that for 2 hours this morning. It was great. And I am really being purposeful about being out in classrooms, and that's one of the best parts of my job. So it's also good for teaching and learning, but it's good for me in lots of ways. Budget, which I know you referenced, obviously, I wasn't even going to put this in. I honestly, if Bob wasn't new, I was going to take it out because it's so just what we have to do. But I want to be sure we're thoughtful about it. Several of you are new. New leadership at the towns, both communities. So it seemed warranted to leave it intentionally developed here in terms of all those connections we need to build. And I think the final point there, I'll just message, the budget should reflect all these other priorities I'm talking about. And that's the tool and the strength of the process, hopefully. DEIB, of course, that needed a place here. So making sure we continue to build safe spaces. I think to the point of students having safe space to share how things are going for them, staff, parents, community, multiple media and forums. Working with Andrew on the strategic plan and the roles that I have in that. I continue to serve and lead on the Superintendent's Association statewide DEI committees and value that work greatly. And then continuing to really making sure that the Metco Boston initiatives that we named last spring and worked really closely with all of you on, we execute and implement and make sure we get the feedback that we're being positive and effective on that. The middle school project, I think we've talked on tonight, so I'll kind of leave that as is, but we're obviously hoping to break ground. And then I'm going to leave the strategic plan one because it is an upcoming agenda item, and I'll talk all through that process. So it feels really good. There's no COVID goals here for the first time in years. So I'll just wind up with that.
Yeah.
That notice. Yeah.
That is great.
Yeah.
Any comments or discussion on superintendent's goals?
Where would MCAS data review be in that?
Yeah, that'll be in one of the first ones where we're bringing data to you. I'd probably put it in these goals under the MTSS goal.
Okay.
Kristen's planning to come probably in November.
Yeah, it's not fully out yet, so.
Yeah, we're
Yeah,
waiting
it's
to
the
make
end of
sure
the
we
month.
have all the data.
October, end of October, end of September. Right. Okay.
Yeah, so I think we were looking at late October.
We have some, we have, like some data probably unpacked.
Can you use a microphone, Kristen? Sorry, Mark's. Sorry.
Sorry, Mark. We have some MCAS data, but we don't have like the full comparative data. So we had to push the date back, but we do have all of our other measures like access data for just for our ELLs, SAT, ACT, all of that. So we'll bring all of that to you at one fell swoop.
Great. Great. Anyone else? Okay. All right, moving on to the most exciting topic of warrant approvals and signing. So I've had 2 volunteers so far. Sharon and Carrie, thank you for volunteering. We're looking for some more volunteers. So we officially need to just appoint warrant signers. We need 3 for CPS. We need 4 for the region. Sharon is offered in the region. So Sarah, you're off the hook officially. So we need 2 more members of Concord, and I would ask if anyone would like to volunteer. Sure. Cynthia. Anyone else? All right, Alexa, we're gonna find it out. Who is it gonna be?
I didn't realize my language wasn't like.
I was moving back.
I'm happy to do it.
Back, I'll admit that. So at CPS, we will all still receive the warrant. So everyone will still have the warrant. The process is still the same. If you have any questions, please send them through the chairs. So we have Cynthia, and we're going to vote on this later, Carrie and Alexa at CPS. And we have Cynthia, Carrie, Alexa, and Sharon at the region. Okay.
Can you clarify what this actually does?
Yes. So the warrant.
Can I have an idea?
Yep. So the warrant is, I'm gonna ask Dr. Hunter to actually, no, but let's ask Bob. Let's ask Bob. To the meeting. So
From Bob.
it's a Bob.
He actually didn't know when I cue him.
That was a subtle cue. I'm gonna ask Bob to explain this one. Go ahead. You'll do a better job than I will.
Well, I should, I guess. Pause a sec. I think there's legislation that allows you to designate a signer for the payables and payroll warrants. Typically, it's a single person.
Microphone. Sorry, microphone. Sorry.
There's legislation both for, it's 2 separate types of districts, a regional district and municipal district. So CPS is, there's one legislation. There's a different one for the regional district, Concord, Carlisle. Basically allows you to designate a reviewer, a signer, and then to have an alternate. And what you're supposed to do is then report at the next meeting. What I did in my last district was we just posted the warrant as backup, or we just distributed it to members. So the information will be made available to everybody. So.
Can you,
Yeah.
we did not, okay, so we are not changing the process. We're not ready to change the process to a single designee.
Okay.
So we were going to just decide who the designees were going to be for this
I
year.
think Domingo's trying to understand.
So like what a
what's a
warrant.
Right, because you
Yeah.
said, I'm looking at the
Right.
door.
It's a list of, yeah, no, when I started in this, I had the same confusion. Why is it called a warrant? And I still don't know why it's called that, but it's basically a list of bills that we're gonna pay.
Okay.
And it has to be in public school districts, it has to be approved by the school committee before we can pay a bill.
Okay.
And I will admit, I didn't know what a warrant was, and I was assigned to be a signer, and then I got it and I diligently printed out the entire thing and sat down for hours. Now, to print it out, it might be like 40 pages sometimes, and I had no idea what I was doing.
Such a public notice, because we will use
Yes.
warrant again and again and again.
So in this situation,
It'll
it's
be
bills.
a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
It's
basically
bills
it's a
to be
bill.
paid. It's a bill.
It's a bill.
It's a bill that we
Okay.
approve.
And this is not to be confused with the town warrant, which is
totally
another thing that we'll get to
Yeah.
closer to December. Yes.
Right. So for this purposes, this is all the bills of the district. So there's one for CPS, there's a warrant for CPS, there's one, well, there are 2 for CPS and 2 for the region. One is payroll and one is other bills. That's how I interpret it. And then same for the
Yeah,
region.
because someone who's watching, they're like, Warren, why is the school getting a warrant?
Right.
Thank
Excellent
Thank
point.
you.
Thank you. All right.
So can I just make a point?
Yes.
If you're picking a subcommittee,
Mhm.
everybody has to sign. It has to be a majority of the school committee. If you're not doing this alternate process, a majority of the school committee has to sign. So if
Yep.
you have 4 for the region,
Yep.
if somebody's out sick or not
Mhm.
available.
The
Then
others
we can't-
become alternates.
The other, right.
Then maybe that's fine. if
So
they're
could
all-
the, so I could be an alternate, Court could be an alternate. So if you enter into situation, if there's a situation where they're not signed, you would reach out to the chairs. If someone was sick or
Very good.
unavailable.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
And as a
We
new
should clarify that.
signer, is there like someone to
Oh.
talk to about how it all works? Like Tracy?
Yes, yes. So we can have a discussion about how warrants work. And as a signer, I also thought I was supposed to physically sign a document.
It's just an
We do it through email. So we approve it through an email process, and that's the process we're going to continue with, or
We can for now. We can look
For now,
into-
okay.
There's signing via Adobe that's permitted. Some districts to do, but
Mm-hmm.
we can look into that.
okay, great. Okay,
Thanks, guys.
thank you. All
Yeah,
right.
Carlisle, I was like signing on my computer, right? Like I couldn't just write back, I approve. I had to actually like sign on the PDF
Physically
or-
sign it,
or print the cover page and scan it back.
Right.
And is this effective like after this meeting, assuming it passes in a vote?
If it passes, it's effective immediately. Yes.
Great.
You can sense that maybe I'm looking forward to passing the torch. Court, what do you think? Court, are you looking forward to? Okay, great.
I didn't even want to look at Lex.
I know. Okay, so moving on, and I'm gonna go back to Dr. Hunter and the strategic planning process for 2023 to 2028.
Yeah, this actually is what I'm probably most excited about this year. So our strategic plan was crafted in 2018, and I'm going to talk through the process because I think it's important you hear what we did 5 years ago, and what we're planning now is going to essentially replicate that. A lot of you at the table were very involved at the time. We worked with a consultant, Lori Likas, who is unfortunately not able to sit and be at the table with us, but will consult from the side, which wasn't the original plan, but it will still be just fine. So what we really try to do is have a representative process where there's a large planning team. You can see I've highlighted that on the memo. And last time, 5 years ago, the planning team was 50 people big. Representatives from all different groups across both communities. Boston for sure was represented, both a father and a daughter were here. And then liaised back to them as a group. So I'll get to that in a minute, because the planning team has a role and responsibility to liaise to the people that they represent. So the PTG will send us people, CPAC will send us people, school committee, we do have to talk about how you're going to engage because of your quorum open meeting stuff. And the Community League of Women Voters, the town halls had people here, and it was an incredible session, incredible 4 sessions together. So what we will do, the front loaded work is really where the leadership team, and I'm pointing to Bob and Kristen, because the administrative team does some drafting of things for you to see, just to make it doable in a 50 so person group of 3 hours to get started. Then that group is going to essentially be taking on the data analysis after they've gone out to work with the groups that they liaise with. So initially, we're going to bring you some thoughts on the 17th of October, the 50-person group, which I'm about to start recruiting for, of like our thoughts on where we are 5 years into the strategic plan and what we feel like we've accomplished, what we think we've made some progress in, what we didn't get to. COVID wasn't in the plan 2018. So some things got really well done and others not as much. And we've been trying to name that. And that will be a lot of the work that the group does, is sort of reflecting on where we are. And then the visioning activity is, how do we see ourselves in 5 years? And the power of this visioning activities, and you're going to do this as part of the group, describe this district, these schools, our kids, our classrooms in 5 years. Really put yourself in the present tense as if it is 2028. And that I can't say enough about what that tense of verb thing does to empower the discussion. We replicate that visioning activity. It's qualitative data, so it's a heavy lift because it's a lot of language that comes back. So we do it once with the big group. They all essentially get trained on how to run the visioning activity, how to collect the data. And then they go off between October and December to do it with each of the groups they represent. So CPAC will do it with CPAC, PTGs, et cetera, et cetera. And then when we come back together in December, we got this big data lift and we choreograph an unbelievably effective structure to divide up the data, which is pages and pages and pages of, narrative, and divide it up. So we look for themes. And in December, between December and February, that will all get synthesized and cleaned up based on the themes that the big group finds. We'll get it polished enough to share out. February, come back, sort of take those themes and start to write what turned into objectives and initiatives for the next 5 years. And it somehow all comes together in what's a really big process with a lot of people and buy-in involved. What we found 5 years ago was the same things rose to the top, like the aggregating of the data is pretty straightforward because the themes were very similar across all the different stakeholder groups, which made it simpler. Is that going to be the case right now? We won't know till we ask. And then in March, the hope is to get to where we're going to have, something to really start to put together for public viewing, et cetera. One piece that I didn't mention that's along the way in all of this, the first page of the 2 pages of our strategic plan are key cornerstones to that plan, which is mission, vision, core values, some really important statements that the big 50-member group will also review and make sure they still speak to what we're aiming for. But the kids are surveyed. We work hard with the kids to all feedback. We did it in advisory and home base last time so that they could do the visioning activity and bring that back. We did it with every faculty at a faculty meeting. We ran multiple parent groups. I pointed a few people because I was at Sarah's house 5 years ago doing it with her in Carlisle, making sure we heard from the Carlisle folks. And I think what a 5 years we've had. So to really look back, knowing we had all these goals plus COVID, I think it's going to be really satisfying in lots of ways, validating, but it's also going to start to set where we need to go next, what didn't get done and what needs to get added to the plate, maybe taken off. We looked at them today together real quickly, and there's some things there we wouldn't have worded the same way now. We're like, oh, that doesn't quite fit the way we said it back at 5 years ago. So there'll be some tweaking as well. And if there's major changes that this just doesn't pertain anymore, that'll need to happen too. So in terms of the school committee, this gets, none of you are here as school committee members though. So
No. I think 3, so raise your hand if you were on it.
Yeah.
I saw you there.
And
I like coming on.
Yeah.
Was in this room for some of the sessions, but probably not for the first one for some
That,
reason.
well, because the election probably happened midway through or something.
Yeah, and I can't echo enough the praise that Lori puts on that process.
Yeah.
It was exceptional.
It was.
It was.
exceptional. Yeah,
It was. And Harry, who was one of our student
Yeah,
reps,
Harry-
was a
Harry's the
6th grader
student
on that committee. And I remember him vividly because he was quite vocal.
Very
It was
vocal. Yeah.
Really
No
great.
surprise at all that he's sitting here now. The way we manage the school committee, and this is up for discussion, and you don't have to settle it tonight, but you want to start thinking about it. Everybody wanted to participate at all of the big meetings, right? So, but we didn't want to post. We didn't want to get too complicated about it. So what that committee 5 years ago decided to do was to pick 2 people who would participate in the 50-member sessions because they were split up at tables. Everybody else could attend as observers. And everybody could come to all of them either as observer or participant, depending on this rotation that allowed different people at the table, to engage with the groups while the others observed. And that allowed all 7 of them at the time to fully engage and participate because they always knew what was going on. And when it was their turn at the table, they hadn't missed a beat. They did put a norm among themselves to say, if you're going to participate, you have to be at all 4 meetings. So that's how they handled it. It's up for discussion if you want to take that same creative strategy.
So for clarification, the 7 members sort of cycled through being at
Yes.
At the
of
physical
the 2
table.
people at the
Yes.
table. However,
Literally at the table.
Literally
yes,
at
yes,
the
yes.
table. And otherwise they were
They were
like,
there.
sitting
I remember.
Yeah, they were
I
there. They were in
remember,
the audience.
and the idea being that if you ever wanted a seat at the table, you had to commit to being in the audience 3 out of 4 times, essentially.
correct.
Okay, Got it.
So the gift that Domingos and Aisha have is as non-voting members and you're not technically part of the quorum, you can be at all 4 sessions
all.
with no public meeting and just be the representative. So that's actually some interesting.
And participate. I know, it is very
Yeah.
interesting.
Progress.
Yeah. Yeah, the lack of boundary on you actually is a positive there. So that's great. You folks, what you don't want to do, you know, they, at least 5 years ago, we didn't want to post meetings and say we were deliberating about a strategic plan when there were so many other things going on at the time. That's not
Mhm.
totally what was happening.
Mhm.
So
So you have the it's 4 meetings.
it's 4 meetings. The dates are set
Yeah.
here and I'm sticking to those dates because with all these folks involved, that'll, you know, we have to make the schedule and ask people to make it work.
And Erin, can I ask you to, if you could pull up the 4 meetings?
It's on that, yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
it is on the same sheet.
It's also on the
If you want to open your link.
attachment to the strategic planning piece.
And
Yeah,
given
up
the
there.
late hour, I'd propose, can we put discussing how we might do that at our next meeting?
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
okay? To
Well, the
everybody, so
The first meeting is October 17th. So between now and the next meeting, look at your schedules.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to participate, you have to be at all 4 from 4 to 7. So it's October 17th, December 7th, February 8th, and March 22nd. So we'll be ready to I guess, ask people.
And
Who's
so
going to be
and
with,
just-
yes,
And
Sarah.
if you can't commit to 3 out of 4 of the sessions, you are welcome to attend as an
Still
observer
attend, right.
anytime you can
Sure.
go.
Yeah.
Right.
But we definitely need 2 people sitting at that table of 50
Yeah.
participating.
Does this ultimately come to school committee for formal approval? Is that?
I forget how we did
I
it.
forget too.
Yeah.
And I think on the one hand, it enhances it. On the other hand, we don't want this group to think they're subservient to.
Yeah.
That
the
it
school
would needs to be
committee, because
approved,
it's
right?
So powerful in and of
Right.
itself. So let's look at that. and
Yeah.
answer
You
that
might have
question.
accepted it more than approved it.
Accept it,
something
yeah.
Like that. It certainly was brought to you.
I'm gonna go with an operational question now. I thought the outside consultant and her objectivity or independence was critical. Plus, she was a very gifted
She was
facilitator.
good.
If she's only consulting, do you have confidence that you're gonna have that baton in the room that you need?
Yeah, Kristen's offered to help. So yeah, this time because we
Beyond
know
your
the
control.
process. And I talked with Lori at length about that. There was actually, I took a lot of pressure from the Superintendent's Association as a first-year superintendent for not running the process last time. And I pushed back hard. I'm like, absolutely not. I'd want it to be outside. This time I'm more almost neutral. Without it being Lori who knew us, I don't know, there's something about someone who knows the plan, because she said even and agreed with me, because we're not starting with a new plan, we're going to the second 5 years of a plan. She felt it was less critical.
The
and
scaffolding is in place.
yeah.
Yeah, and I would say the envisioning process is something that's called the Futures Protocol. And that I run 2 or 3 times a year with different groups for different purposes. Yeah.
Which is
And I
great
just-
that we have the talent right here. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And I would just say, given the October 17th timeframe, even though we're not discussing how we might run this process internally, just straw poll, will we be okay to discuss and vote on how we do that at our September 27th meeting? Just, you know, in a one-shot deal, everyone, you know, just because we like to do the 2-step.
I think what she's saying is she's kind of proposing that we run it the same way that the last committee did with the rotation.
No, I'm not.
Oh, you're not
Yeah,
supposed
no, I'm just saying,
Oh,
let's,
sorry.
so I was saying, in the essence of time, because we want to get out of here, let's not discuss how we might run it tonight, unless everyone sort of agrees,
Yeah.
let's do that, but,
We
so-
think it's gonna go.
right, but we'll discuss it at the 9/27 meeting and also vote it so that everybody has time to prepare, because we kick up on the 17th. Is everyone
Right.
okay with that? Good discussion and a
yeah.
vote in the same night? Okay, good.
Yeah, okay,
Just want to make sure.
great. Right, moving on to Mr. Connery. Thank you.
Good evening. I have 4 items to report on. 2 require a vote. I'll just go through them in the order they appear on the agenda. The first one is Dr. Hunter and I are proposing an increase to short-term substitute pay from the current rate of $100 a day to an increase of $130 per day. which equates to $20 per hour. This is for short-term assignments of less than 10 days. We've looked at our rates for us. We have different rates for longer substitute periods, and we're competitive. We're very competitive on those rates. So no changes are being proposed to those. The rationale for this I've outlined in the memo, but just to kind of cover them. Right now, we're not the only district. It's very difficult to find people who want to be substitute teachers. Pay is cited as a factor sometimes. Our pay is relatively low. We did some benchmarking with what we call our peer communities. There are a couple that are less, but I've talked to one of the directors there and he said, yeah, we have a problem. We should be doing something about it. So let us know how your process goes. So I think it's kind of a widespread problem. And this is a step that we think we should take to improve the situation. Hopefully we can attract some more candidates. And, this is important. The last point, it's very important to having continuity in our teaching and learning and providing quality instruction, or not pulling people from other assignments to cover. We recommend and hope for your support on this item. The next two items are kind of routine. I don't have a lot more to tell you. I can tell you for the feasibility study, we're looking at, in case people aren't familiar with this, we're looking at a RFP process. We basically request proposals to look at electrification of the Alcott Elementary School for its heating and cooling. You may recall there was some community discussion and decision to defer looking at a high efficiency boiler there. So this was the next step that we decided is let's take a look at electrification. What would it cost? We received 5 applicants' proposals. They're like 50, 60 pages each. We're going through that now, ranking the candidates, and then we'll consider price after we've done that. The RFP process allows us to consider their qualifications, their submission, and not just price. Sometimes your lowest price. And we're looking at a 2 million potential plus scope project. We're not necessarily going to look to save $1,000 and pick somebody who's cheaper. So that's why we did the RFP process. But we're still evaluating. I hopefully we'll have a selection in the next few days. But we're pretty pleased with the applications we've received. And then just an informational update. We have, you may notice that periodically there's some reimbursements on our warrants. We have a P card that we no longer use because the vendor service was not very good, didn't meet our requirements. And so we terminated that arrangement. I'm currently reviewing a legal document with another vendor, TD Bank, that is a partner of ours for 5 years. Is an excellent firm, and they have a specific division that services municipalities and school districts. So I feel like that'll be a much better fit, but that's in process and will help us avoid the most of these reimbursements in the future. So that's just an informational update. The P card account, as I understand it, we have one, has been previously authorized, so does not require a vote.
And it's kind of just like a credit card, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, and make decisions on limits and things.
Okay.
There's usually parameters on the card that only allows certain uses.
Yep.
Like you
Okay.
can't buy lottery tickets on
Yeah,
things like
yeah.
that, so.
And I guess just for clarity of the warrant signers, I'll just bring up a question that I had from the warrant this week that I passed along. When you might see a staff member's name with an amount of money, and it's because we didn't have the P card. So I actually, Bob was able to refer me to his memo, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, okay, great. So that's just another piece of that warrant process.
Yeah. You will still see, there are reimbursements. For example, somebody takes a course, they get reimbursed after they complete the course. So you're still going to see some of those, but there are certain vendors who we need to use a P card with. So that's in process.
Great.
The last item is a separate memo for, I just wanted to, it's in the action item section, but we have very specific language. This relates to borrowing for the access road work at the high school, which my understanding was previously discussed and may not have been formally approved by the school committee. It was approved by the town just recently, last Tuesday. Last week. And I needed to put it in a separate memo because there's very specific language that our bond counsel and wants you to approve. I don't have an answer to my question, which is, can you just approve the motion as written? So I think I would ask for tonight that you read the full motion, unfortunately.
Okay.
I'll push for an answer next time, so in the future, we know whether it needs to be read or not. So this is a project related to the access road. The bulk of the money will come from this borrowing. There's an additional 200,000 that will come from the capital stabilization fund. The timeline is going to be out a little bit. So, but we do need this approval before we can move forward with the borrowing.
Okay. Any questions? Cynthia?
Have we talked to the town as to whether there's an escalation in the project?
There is an inflation factor and a contingency built into the estimate for this.
Do they feel still, as I'm saying, the town still feels confident with their number? Because I've seen a couple of towns say that it's even with their contingency, it's gone above that.
Yeah, I would say, if I look at this, if I use the building project as an example, if it were to go 5% above, that's $50,000. We'd have the ability to access and pay for it in other ways. I'm not too concerned about
Okay,
it.
out of operation. Okay.
You know, as a last resort, you know, if there's, you know, we could look at the scope too. And there may be some minor things where we could save some money, but I would prefer to avoid that if we didn't need to do that.
You're on it. Good, thank you.
Great. Anyone else?
On the feasibility study, can you just, I know it's in your memo, it said that it will be done this fall, but can you talk through what the timeline on that would look like?
So we've asked them to have us a report to us so that we can consider it in during the budget process, but it's going to be kind of near. We anticipate having a report maybe, I think, late November. I don't have the specific date memorized, but we did give them a date. We wanted to have the information before we did our December budget presentation. I don't know if I'm speaking into this enough, but so we'd like to have that information for our December budget presentation so we can share it. You know, this is a broad issue, sustainability. You know, we have certain capital allocated to us, 900,000 a year at CPS. And I don't think that we necessarily have capacity built in to support large sustainability like electrification of Alcott, Willard, and Thoreau. So, you know, this is a way to kind of get some of those issues on the table and have a broader discussion than just us trying to pigeonhole it into a smaller capital budget.
Makes sense.
In fact, and I guess Matt's going to hear this firsthand, I think probably worth noting at our session on capital planning with the select board in 2 weeks, at least put a placeholder out there, because that discussion is about 5 million and above. Based on what I saw in the Acton report for electrifying buildings, it adds up very quickly, and some of these may have high price tags. So I think you want to, and we're not going to meet again because we're meeting with them before our meeting. So I just want to say, I think you probably want to put at least a placeholder out with the select board to say, this is what we're exploring. My words have been till now, we don't need anything probably. And if this is going to become the priority, it's going to be a town discussion, not just a school decision.
Court?
In reference to substitutes, happy to support it. Think it's necessary. I think the school committee would benefit from perhaps an annual update on the attendance status in our schools, how we stand, because I think it is a trend line for us to follow in terms of need for coverage and workforce stability.
Yeah, COVID's just made that extraordinary. So it's not what it's hard to compare.
Not through the COVID lens.
Yeah.
No, I'm not suggesting that.
Okay.
Thank you, Bob. These memos
thank
are
you. Thank you.
really great and clear. I appreciate that so much.
Very clear. Okay. So on to our action items. This is the exciting part of the night. The first action item we have is to approve the CCHS travel. And if you open up your agenda, there is a motion stated there, but the motion actually, we need to remove the Ecuador trip. So which is Sorry, I'm just opening mine up at the same
First
time.
motion says 7 trips, you're gonna
Be 6
make
trips,
that
yeah.
6.
So,
Can I just ask a question just about on the agenda itself, it says vote to approve CCHS travel 22 to 23, but we are actually approving 2 trips that are in 2024. Should we like update the agenda to reflect? I mean.
We debated that
Yeah.
after it was posted and
Okay.
it was, yesterday afternoon. Yeah, you're correct.
and I think the tricky part is there might be more trips in 2024, so we're not.
You don't want to look like this.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh,
This
right.
is the motion that we're held to. So
Yes.
The motion is correct.
We could just change it to CCHS travel.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so.
I'll make it.
Carrie, go right ahead.
I move
to
that the
read
Concord
changes.
Carlisle School Committee votes to approve the 6 overnight trips as outlined with the condition that a signed district liability waiver is received from all participants.
Do we have a second?
Second,
Any discussion?
No.
the one not on the list, just for public record here, is which one?
February
Ecuador.
4th, Ecuador.
Ecuador.
exchange.
Very much. just
Should
so
be
that's clear.
removed. Thank you. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the trips are happening. It's very exciting. On to our next vote, which is to approve the CCHS handbook.
So I'll speak to that
Yeah.
just briefly. It's the same as the Concord Committee did earlier for the CMS handbook. We only changed dates and names. I've heard the feedback that we need to do some proofing of policies and such as we prepare for the spring version of this handbook. But we just wanted to formalize the dates, names, and the 22-23 version of it.
Okay. Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. And now on to a vote to approve the policy committee, and I don't believe we have attached language to that. And as a reminder, I have appointed I would like to appoint the entire committee, and I would like to appoint Carrie Rankin to chair that, and I cannot make a motion.
So it's a policy subcommittee of the whole,
Yes,
not committee. The
Yes.
subcommittee of the whole. We only have one school
Yes.
committee.
we only have one school committee, right? So we can call it a subcommittee of the
Sorry.
whole.
Yeah.
So moved.
Second?
It's okay. You want a second? You can second.
Oh, I can second. I'll
Yes.
second.
Alexa's gonna second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
And you're voting that for both districts?
Yes.
Thank you.
yes,
Uh,
I for
wow.
both. See, now I'm not used to this non-roll call. when
Yeah.
I'm voting for both districts. Thank you, Dr. Hunter. Okay, on to our warrant signatories, and we do not have motions for these, so I would entertain a motion to appoint Cynthia Rainey. Oh, actually, I can make a motion for CPS.
Let's
can't I?
do two.
You need
Two
two
mo-
motions there. I'd agree.
So I'm gonna make a motion that Cynthia Rainey, Carrie Rankin, and Alexa Anderson be warrant signers for Concord Public Schools.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No one? Okay. And I can't make this motion, but I would entertain a motion to appoint Cynthia Rainey, Carrie Rankin, Alexa Anderson, and Sharon Witt to be warrant signers for Concord Carlisle Regional School District.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? We good?
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye for both. No, just for region. Sorry, I messed that up myself. And now we're on to our substitute pay, and I believe we have a motion on there, and I would ask that someone read the motion.
Is it both districts or?
Yes.
Yeah, it's
I
written that
move
way.
that the Concord and Concord Carlisle Regional School Committees vote to authorize district administration to increase the short-term substitute teacher per diem rate to $130 per day.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
How do we vote?
How do we
Right?
vote for both? Because
I
this is,
can't
I
even
haven't
remember.
voted.
You say you're voting for both unless you're from Carlisle.
You just say
You
it
say
all
you're
at the
voting for
same
the-
time.
So they say both and we, like, instead of saying I,
Or
they say
the
both
chairs
and
can-
we say
The
region.
chairs can call.
For the
the
region.
votes, Yeah, for the region. You take turns calling it.
Oh,
Okay,
okay.
let's do that.
And the
Okay.
Concord members respond. I'm
Go ahead.
doing it.
Go ahead.
I'd like to call, okay.
Substitute.
Substitute, all those in favor for
For Concord.
CPS.
Aye.
Aye.
All those in favor of region?
Aye.
Now I
Right,
remember.
got it.
Okay,
Okay,
good. Thank
I
you,
have no
guys.
recollection. I wasn't here for that. Okay,
Just
and the last action item we have is the vote to approve the CCHS access road borrowing, and this is a very lengthy motion that should be read in full
It's the regional district.
for the region. So this is the region is voting on this.
I move that the Concord Carlisle Regional School Committee approve the following motion. That for the purpose of paying the costs of reconstruction of the access road on the district's campus, including the payment of all other costs incidental and related thereto, there be and hereby is authorized under and pursuant to Chapter 71, Section 16, subsection D of the general laws and the district agreement as amended, the incurring of debt on the full faith and credit of the district by the issuance and sale at one time or from time to time of bonds or notes in an aggregate principal amount of $853,665. Any premium received by the district upon the sale of any bonds or notes approved by this note, less any such premium applied to the payment of the costs of issuance of such bonds or notes, may be applied to the payment of costs approved by this vote in accordance with Chapter 44, Section 20 of the general laws, thereby reducing the amount authorized to be borrowed to pay such costs by a like amount. And that within 7 days of the date on which this vote is adopted, the secretary be and hereby is instructed to notify the Board of Selectmen, or in our case, the Select Board for Concord, of each of the member towns of this district as to the amount and general purposes of the debt herein authorized, as required by Chapter 71, Section 16D of the general laws and by the district agreement.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Should we read the motion? Okay, and for the region, all in favor?
Just embedded in all of that language is if we do better on the borrowing, we shave off some of these costs. You can explain it better than I can, but that amount won't go up. It may well go down because of our borrowing capacity, our bond rating.
Sometimes you get a premium when you issue a bond and it reduces the borrowing.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, and that passes.
Concord, don't you have to vote?
No,
Just region.
no, so,
Not gonna read that.
now, yes, so, we can move to adjourn. Anyone?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank
We're
you all.
done. Thank you all.
Great meeting. Domingos, nice to have you at the table.
Oh, thanks for having me.